Long before the modern ocean took shape, whales were already locked in an evolutionary arms race. The Miocene seas were warm, productive, and crowded with species that no longer exist. Whales were diversifying into forms unlike anything swimming today, filling ecological roles that have since disappeared entirely. Among them was a predator built to hunt its own kind. Its skull alone measured nearly 10 feet. Its jaws carried enormous functional teeth in both the upper and lower jaw, some reaching roughly 14 inches, among the largest known biting teeth of any animal. Those teeth were not built for catching squid. They were built to seize large, struggling prey, where preserved on opposing teeth suggests they repeatedly contacted under tremendous force, creating a mouth capable of gripping animals weighing several tons. This predator was not a shark or a surviving marine reptile from some earlier age. It was a whale, warm-blooded, air-breathing, and built for a form of predation that has disappeared entirely from the modern ocean. Its name was Livyatan melvillei. Fossils attributed to Livyatan and closely related giant raptorial sperm whales suggest that predators of this kind occupied Miocene seas alongside another enormous hunter, the megatoothed shark. Two radically different predators sharing an ocean filled with prey large enough to sustain them both. And then that world disappeared. Today, we'll uncover how evolution produced a whale capable of hunting other whales. Long before the familiar rhythms of the modern sea settled into place, the world entered an age of remarkable transformation. Continents continued their gradual wanderings. Mountain ranges climbed higher, coastlines shifted, and currents found fresh paths through expanding ocean basins. Across nearly 18 million years, from roughly 23 million years ago until about 5 million years ago, the Miocene became one of the most influential chapters in the history of marine life. Many of the creatures that now define the oceans first emerged during this long interval, while others followed evolutionary paths that would never be repeated. Near the middle of this epoch, around 15 million years ago, the planet entered an especially warm interval known as the mid-Miocene climatic optimum. Average global temperatures rose above those of the present day, creating broad regions of warm, nutrient-rich seas. Coastal upwelling carried minerals from deep water toward the surface, feeding immense blooms of microscopic algae. Sunlight poured into these productive waters, supporting food webs that stretched from tiny drifting organisms to enormous marine mammals. Energy flowed through the ecosystem with unusual abundance, allowing predators and prey alike to reach sizes rarely seen before or since. Along many rocky shorelines, another innovation appeared. The earliest known kelp forests spread through cool, fertile coastal waters, their towering fronds rising toward the surface like underwater woodlands. Countless fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and juvenile marine mammals found shelter among those waving columns. Every leaf became part of a living structure that slowed currents, trapped nutrients, and created countless places where life could flourish. Entire communities developed within these submerged forests, adding another layer of complexity to an ocean already overflowing with opportunity. Far from shore, immense circular current systems gradually strengthened across both hemispheres. These great gyres redistributed heat, nutrients, and drifting life over thousands of miles, linking distant coastlines into a connected marine world. Seasonal migrations became increasingly valuable as animals learned to follow reliable pathways toward breeding grounds and feeding areas. Food was no longer scattered by chance alone. The moving water itself shaped where animals traveled, where populations expanded, and where new species slowly diverged from their ancestors. Marine mammals responded with astonishing speed in evolutionary terms. Baleen whales diversified into many forms, each adapted to different feeding strategies and habitats. Toothed whales explored equally varied roles, refining echolocation, pursuing active prey, and occupying ecological niches that stretched from shallow coasts to the open sea. Sea lions, seals, walruses, and sea cows also spread through these productive environments, each lineage carving out its own place within an increasingly crowded ecosystem. Competition encouraged specialization, and specialization encouraged still greater diversity. Such abundance carried its own consequences. Every thriving population attracted hunters capable of exploiting it. Gigantic mega-toothed sharks cruised productive coastlines where marine mammals gathered in great numbers. Powerful predatory sperm whales evolved alongside them, no longer relying primarily on fish or squid, but increasingly targeting large vertebrates. The growing richness of the Miocene did not soften the struggle for survival. Instead, it supplied enough energy to sustain predators whose immense bodies demanded extraordinary meals. Natural selection rewarded every improvement that increased hunting success or enhanced escape. Faster swimming, sharper hearing, more efficient lungs, stronger jaws, thicker layers of insulating fat, and increasingly sophisticated social behavior all became valuable advantages. Evolution unfolded not as a straight path, but as countless branching experiments, each tested against the pressures of a living ocean that offered remarkable opportunities while demanding constant adaptation. Within this restless world, the boundaries between hunter and hunted became ever more refined. Every current, coastline, and migration route helped shape an ecosystem where scale itself became a competitive advantage. From those conditions emerged some of the largest carnivores the mammalian lineage would ever produce, creatures molded by an ocean overflowing with life, where abundance fueled rivalry, and rivalry steadily forged giants. The story of the greatest hunters ever to enter the sea did not begin beneath waves at all. It began beside winding rivers, in floodplains shaded by forests, where small hoofed mammals moved cautiously between water and land. Their world was filled with familiar sounds, rustling leaves, insects, birds, and the steady flow of fresh water. Nothing about their appearance suggested that their descendants would one day cross entire oceans or grow larger than any land mammal that had ever lived. Around 50 million years ago, one such animal walked the margins of lakes and riverbanks across what is now Pakistan and India. Paleontologists call it Pakicetus. Standing only about the size of a goat, it balanced on four slender legs and hunted both small terrestrial animals and freshwater fish. Its long snout and sharp teeth reflected the habits of an active predator, yet one remarkable feature rested within its skull. The bones surrounding its ear possessed characteristics found only in whales, revealing an unexpected family connection hidden beneath an otherwise ordinary body. Pakicetus spent much of its life on land, but it possessed an unusual ability to detect sounds traveling through water. That sensitivity offered access to prey unavailable to many competing predators. A successful hunt rewarded those individuals willing to linger along shorelines where rivers and lakes blurred the boundary between two worlds. Over countless generations, natural selection favored bodies increasingly comfortable in water without abandoning the land all at once. Evolution rarely moves through dramatic leaps. Instead, it accumulates countless tiny changes, each useful in its own moment. Across nearly 20 million years, one generation inherited subtle differences from the last. Limbs became better suited for paddling, bodies stretched into more streamlined forms, bones grew denser, helping animals remain submerged while searching for food beneath the surface. Every adaptation reflected immediate survival rather than distant destiny. Among these transitional species appeared Ambulatodes, whose name means walking whale. Living around 48 million years ago, it still carried four strong limbs capable of supporting its weight ashore. Its hind feet bore broad webbing between the toes, providing extra propulsion through rivers and coastal waters. The spine flexed more freely than that of fully terrestrial mammals, allowing powerful undulating movements during swimming. On land, it remained capable, but in water, its body already hinted at the graceful efficiency that later whales would perfect. The wider family tree reaches even farther back. Around 55 million years ago, whales and hippopotamuses shared a common ancestor, an ancient hoofed mammal, unlike either descendant. Over immense spans of time, one branch remained tied to rivers and marshes, eventually giving rise to modern hippopotamuses. The other continued its gradual commitment to aquatic life. Today, despite their striking differences in appearance, genetic evidence identifies the hippopotamus as the closest living relative of every whale on Earth. As millions of years unfolded, increasingly aquatic species such as Rhodhocetus and Basilosaurus revealed the steady transformation underway. Hind limbs diminished until they no longer supported movement. The pelvis lost its firm attachment to the spine, freeing the body for more efficient swimming. Powerful tails replaced running legs as the primary source of propulsion. Broad horizontal flukes developed at the tail's end, pushing against the water with rhythmic strokes. Unlike the side-to-side motion of fishes, the skull changed as profoundly as the body. Nostrils that once opened near the tip of the snout gradually migrated upward until they rested near the top of the head, allowing effortless breathing while most of the animal remained submerged. Hearing became increasingly specialized for underwater life, while the forelimbs transformed into sturdy flippers capable of steering rather than walking. Fur became less important as thick layers of insulating fat assumed the role of conserving body heat beneath the surface. By the close of this extraordinary transition, the shoreline had ceased to be a destination and had become a distant ancestral memory. A lineage that once wandered muddy banks now belonged entirely to the sea, carrying within every breath, every bone, and every heartbeat the enduring record of a journey from solid ground into the boundless waters that would shape its future. Evolution seldom commits itself to only one solution. Once the ancestors of whales became fully at home in the sea, their shared journey unfolded into separate paths, each shaped by different opportunities hidden within the same ocean. Over millions of years, subtle variations accumulated until one ancient family divided into two profoundly different ways of living. That divergence would influence every whale alive today, from the largest filter feeder drifting through swarms of tiny prey to the formidable hunters that pursued animals nearly their own size. The first lineage gradually surrendered the very feature that had once defined its ancestors. Teeth became less useful as certain whales discovered a richer source of food suspended almost everywhere in productive waters. Instead of grasping individual prey, they evolved flexible plates of keratin hanging from the upper jaw. These structures, known as baleen, resembled long fringed curtains that could trap immense numbers of tiny organisms while allowing seawater to flow back out through the mouth. Every feeding pass gathered thousands of small creatures in a single motion, turning abundance itself into nourishment. This strategy opened possibilities unavailable to active predators. The largest animals ever to inhabit Earth belong to this branch. Blue whales, humpback whales, right whales, and their relatives achieved extraordinary size, not because they hunted enormous prey, but because they harvested countless small ones. Dense swarms of krill and other drifting animals supplied a dependable source of energy across vast stretches of ocean. Massive bodies became practical when food existed in astonishing concentrations, allowing baleen whales to convert tiny meals into tremendous growth. A different branch reached an entirely separate conclusion. Rather than abandoning teeth, these whales refined them generation after generation. Their jaws remained filled with sturdy, biting surfaces capable of gripping active prey. Echolocation developed into a remarkable sensory system, enabling precise navigation and hunting through dark or murky water by interpreting returning sound waves. Dolphins, porpoises, killer whales, beaked whales, and sperm whales all belong to this lineage, known collectively as the toothed whales. Their success rested upon pursuit, precision, and the ability to capture individual animals rather than filtering enormous volumes of seawater. During the Miocene, that already successful design underwent an even more specialized transformation. Among the toothed whales emerged a remarkable group now called the raptorial sperm whales. Unlike the modern sperm whale, whose lifestyle eventually centered on deep diving and soft-bodied squid, these animals remained hunters of powerful vertebrates near the ocean surface. Their skulls became shorter and stronger. Their jaws expanded. Their teeth grew thicker, longer, and more deeply rooted within massive bone. This shift represented far more than simple enlargement. Teeth designed for grasping slippery fish differ greatly from those intended to seize prey equipped with ribs, vertebrae, powerful muscles, and desperate determination. Every feature of the raptorial sperm whale skull reflected those demands. Broad attachment sites anchored formidable jaw muscles. Reinforced bones resisted immense mechanical stress. Curved teeth penetrated deeply and maintained their hold even as struggling prey twisted through open water. The ecological role occupied by these hunters had few parallels among marine mammals. They did not depend primarily on schools of fish, nor did they specialize in cephalopods drifting through the depths. Instead, they targeted prey possessing substantial body mass and strong skeletons. Such animals required tremendous force to overpower, making every successful hunt an expression of specialized anatomy refined across millions of years of evolutionary pressure. By the close of the Miocene, nearly every major whale family familiar today had already appeared somewhere within the world's oceans. Yet one branch stood apart from them all, reaching an extreme unmatched before or since. The raptorial sperm whales represented an evolutionary experiment built upon strength rather than efficiency, upon powerful jaws rather than delicate filtering structures, and upon large living prey rather than drifting abundance. Their lineage eventually vanished, leaving only fossils to reveal how broadly evolution once explored the possibilities hidden within a single ancient family of whales. Nature occasionally explores possibilities that flourish for millions of years before disappearing so completely that only scattered fossils preserve their memory. Among the whales of the Miocene, one such experiment unfolded with remarkable consistency. It did not produce a single unusual predator, but an entire lineage devoted to the pursuit of large, powerful vertebrates. Across countless generations, closely related species refined the same fundamental design, each adding another layer of strength until the family reached its greatest expression. These animals are known today as the macroraptorial sperm whales. Their bodies ranged from relatively modest hunters to immense apex predators. At the smaller end stood Acrophyseter, measuring roughly 13 feet in length, already equipped with formidable jaws and an unmistakably predatory lifestyle. At the opposite extreme stood Livyatan, reaching an estimated 57 feet for the known specimen, with evidence suggesting that some individuals may have grown even larger. Between those limits existed an entire spectrum of specialized hunters, each occupying its own place within the productive seas of the Miocene. Although they differed in size and geographic distribution, these whales shared a recognizable blueprint inherited from a common ancestor. Their snouts were comparatively short and broad rather than elongated. This compact construction strengthened the skull against the tremendous forces generated during biting. Both the upper and lower jaws carried large, functional teeth anchored deeply within heavy bone. Unlike the streamlined mouths of dolphins or the reduced upper dentition of modern sperm whales, every part of the jaw contributed directly to seizing prey. Powerful muscles completed this architecture. Broad attachment areas along the skull allowed immense bundles of muscle to close the jaws with extraordinary force. Success depended less upon slicing than upon maintaining an unbreakable grip. Large prey rarely surrendered immediately. Every struggle demanded strength, endurance, and skeletal reinforcement, capable of resisting repeated impacts. The anatomy of these whales reveals a family shaped by precisely those demands. Among the earliest recognized members was Brigmophyseter shigensis, discovered in marine deposits of Japan. Fossils preserve an animal already displaying many of the defining characteristics of the lineage. Robust teeth, shortened jaws, and cranial proportions all point toward an active predator capable of attacking substantial prey rather than gathering smaller animals. It occupied an ecological role, unlike that of any sperm whale living today, demonstrating that this evolutionary pathway had become established well before the appearance of its largest descendants. Far across the Pacific, another relative patrolled the coastal waters of ancient Peru. Acrophyseter dinodon lived during approximately the same interval that Livyatan inhabited the region, creating an ecosystem where several closely related predators shared overlapping territory. Such coexistence suggests subtle differences in preferred prey, body size, hunting strategy, or habitat use. Modern ecosystems often support multiple carnivores by dividing available resources, and the Miocene likely followed the same ecological principle. Zygophyseter added another chapter to this remarkable family. Known from fossils recovered in what is now Italy, it demonstrated that these predators occupied seas far beyond a single coastline or ocean basin. Their distribution stretched across much of the ancient world, following marine environments capable of sustaining abundant populations of large vertebrate prey. Wherever suitable conditions developed, members of this lineage found opportunities to thrive. Livyatan emerged from this long history rather than appearing without precedent. Every enlarged tooth, every reinforced bone, and every increase in jaw strength reflected millions of years of gradual refinement. It represented the highest point of an evolutionary contest conducted entirely within one branch of the sperm whale family, where natural selection consistently favored individuals capable of overpowering increasingly formidable prey. Then the experiment ended. Every macroraptorial sperm whale vanished from the oceans, leaving no direct descendants to continue their specialized way of life. Another branch of the family survived by pursuing an entirely different future. Modern sperm whales abandoned the pursuit of marine mammals near the surface, turned toward the deep sea, and built their existence around squid instead. Their immense heads still carry echoes of ancient ancestry, but the lineage that once perfected the art of hunting whales belongs entirely to the fossil record. Among the driest landscapes on Earth lies the record of an ancient sea. The Ica Desert of southern Peru appears today as a broad expanse of sun-baked hills, wind-sculpted ridges, and exposed layers of pale sediment. Yet these rocks were once buried beneath productive coastal waters. Over millions of years, countless marine animals settled onto the seafloor, where fine sediments gradually enclosed their remains. The result is the Pisco Formation, one of the richest marine fossil deposits from the age of mammals, preserving an extraordinary archive of whales, seals, sharks, seabirds, turtles, and many other inhabitants of the Miocene. Within those sediments rested the fossil that transformed our understanding of prehistoric sperm whales. Everything currently known about Livyatan comes from a single, partially preserved skull, its associated teeth, and the lower jaw, known as the mandible. No complete backbone has been uncovered. No ribs, flippers, or tail have been found securely connected to the specimen. In many animals, such fragmentary evidence would reveal very little. In Livyatan, the skull alone contains a remarkable amount of information. Stretching roughly 10 feet from front to back, the skull rivals the length of a compact automobile. Every preserved surface carries clues left by muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and specialized soft tissues that disappeared millions of years ago. Paleontologists examine these features with remarkable care, comparing them with living sperm whales and extinct relatives whose anatomy is better understood. Bone becomes a map, and each ridge or depression preserves traces of structures that once surrounded it. The front portion of the skull, called the rostrum, is broad and heavily reinforced. Behind it lie the large eye sockets, positioned to provide substantial room for the organs of vision. Along the sides extend expansive depressions known as the temporal fossae, where the largest jaw-closing muscles once attached. These broad attachment sites immediately distinguish Livyatan from many other marine mammals, suggesting an animal capable of generating tremendous force every time its jaws closed around struggling prey. Perhaps the most distinctive feature lies across the top of the skull. A vast depression, known as the supracranial basin, stretches almost the entire length of the snout, creating the unmistakable box-shaped profile that separates Livyatan from smaller raptorial sperm whales. In modern sperm whales, this region houses the spermaceti organ and the melon, soft tissue structures closely associated with echolocation and sound production. Although those tissues do not fossilize, the surrounding bone preserves the space they once occupied, allowing scientists to estimate both their size and probable arrangement. This unusual cranial architecture reveals that Livyatan was not simply an oversized version of its relatives. The proportions of its head differed in meaningful ways. Smaller raptorial sperm whales often possessed more streamlined, almost dolphin-like skulls. Livyatan carried a broader, deeper head enclosed by tall, bony walls, suggesting substantial modifications to the structures contained within. Even without preserved soft tissue, those differences indicate that its biology diverged from the rest of its family in important respects. From this single skull, researchers have reconstructed surprisingly detailed aspects of the animal's life. The overall dimensions provide estimates of body length when compared with living sperm whales and other fossil species. Muscle attachment scars indicate exceptionally powerful jaws. Tooth sockets reveal the size and spacing of its formidable dentition. The arrangement of sensory structures hints at advanced echolocation abilities, while the enlarged cranial cavity implies a substantial brain consistent with the sophisticated behavior expected from large, toothed whales. Yet, every reconstruction carries an important measure of restraint. Without the remainder of the skeleton, many details remain open to refinement as future discoveries emerge. Estimates of body proportions, swimming style, total weight, and even maximum size all depend upon carefully reasoned comparisons rather than direct observation. Science recognizes those uncertainties rather than concealing them. Even so, the preserved skull speaks with unusual clarity. It demonstrates that a single fossil, when exceptionally complete and studied with patience, can illuminate the outline of an entire animal whose body vanished millions of years before any human ever walked the shores of Peru. Few parts of an extinct animal preserve its purpose more clearly than its teeth. Long after skin, muscle, and organs disappear, enamel and dentine often remain, carrying the record of countless meals within scratches, fractures, and polished surfaces. In the case of Livyatan, those surviving teeth reveal a hunter whose feeding strategy differed profoundly from that of any living sperm whale. They were not ornaments, display structures, or tools for digging. Every feature reflects repeated encounters with powerful prey that resisted capture with all the strength they possessed. The largest known teeth associated with Livyatan reached nearly 14 inches in total length, making them the largest functional biting teeth known from any animal. Other creatures carried longer dental structures. Elephants grew immense tusks. Walruses developed elongated ivory canines, extending well beyond the mouth. Yet those structures served purposes such as display, defense, excavation, or social competition rather than directly gripping and processing prey. Livyatan's teeth belonged to an entirely different category. They were active instruments of predation, built to close around living animals during the decisive moment of a hunt. Their proportions immediately distinguish them from the flattened, cutting teeth of many sharks or the narrow, conical teeth common among fish-eating dolphins. Each tooth formed a thick, dense cone that curved gently near its tip. Rather than functioning as blades designed to slice flesh into pieces, they acted as deeply penetrating anchors. Once embedded, their shape made escape increasingly difficult. Every movement by struggling prey pulled against a surface specifically suited to maintaining an unyielding hold. Strength began far below the visible crown. Massive roots extended deep into the jaws, locking every tooth securely within heavy bone. Such reinforcement distributed enormous forces across the skull whenever the jaws closed. Teeth lacking this support would loosen or fracture under repeated stress. Livyatan instead evolved an arrangement capable of enduring years of forceful impacts generated by encounters with large marine mammals. Close examination of the fossilized teeth has revealed another remarkable feature. Wear patterns occur where opposing teeth repeatedly contacted one another during biting. Instead of passing cleanly beside each other, the upper and lower dentition interlocked with surprising precision. This arrangement created a cage of curved points surrounding captured prey. Once the jaws closed, twisting, rolling, or pulling away became far less effective because movement only pressed the prey more firmly against another series of teeth. Those repeated contacts gradually carved deep grooves into the enamel. These marks accumulated over the lifetime of the animal, recording thousands of forceful bites. They did not arise from occasional accidents or unusual feeding events. They formed through constant use, each encounter polishing some surfaces while cutting narrow channels into others. Every scar preserved within the enamel represents mechanical stress experienced again and again across many years. The contrast with the living sperm whale could scarcely be greater. Modern sperm whales retain functional teeth almost exclusively within the lower jaw. Their upper teeth remain greatly reduced and often never emerge through the gums at all. Since their primary prey consists of soft-bodied squid captured far below the surface, an elaborate biting apparatus offers relatively little advantage. Livyatan followed an entirely separate path. Its upper teeth erupted fully, matching the lower jaw in both size and function. Every closing motion brought two complete rows of formidable teeth together around the prey. The difference becomes even more striking when compared with one of today's most celebrated marine predators. A modern great white shark typically carries teeth measuring only about 2 to 3 inches in length. Those serrated blades excel at cutting flesh through rapid head movements, yet each individual tooth remains comparatively small and is replaced throughout the animal's life. Livyatan possessed teeth approximately 5 times longer, permanently rooted within massive jaws rather than shed and renewed. They were not disposable cutting tools. They formed a durable framework built for repeated crushing pressure and unwavering control over prey large enough to challenge one of the greatest hunters the oceans have ever produced. Power can leave an imprint long after the force itself has vanished. In the fossil record, the shape of bone preserves the places where muscles once anchored, allowing paleontologists to estimate the strength an extinct animal could generate without ever witnessing it alive. Livyatan offers one of the clearest examples of this principle. Although only its skull and jaws have survived, those remains preserve enough anatomical detail to reveal an extraordinary biting apparatus, one unlike anything known among other marine mammals. Researchers have described Livyatan as possessing the biggest tetrapod bite ever found. The significance of that statement reaches far beyond whales alone. Tetrapods include every vertebrate descended from the earliest 4-limbed ancestors, embracing dinosaurs, crocodilians, mammals, birds, and every whale that returned to the sea after its lineage began on land. Within that immense family history, Livyatan stands at the highest known extreme of biting anatomy, combining enormous size with skeletal adaptations devoted to closing the jaws upon exceptionally large prey. One of the most revealing clues lies within the temporal fossae, the broad depressions on either side of the skull that once supported the temporalis muscles. These muscles perform the primary work of closing the jaw. In Livyatan, the attachment surfaces are strikingly expansive relative to overall skull size. Their proportions exceed those seen in the modern sperm whale and more closely resemble those of the killer whale, itself among the most capable mammalian predators alive today. Yet Livyatan carried this muscular arrangement within a body estimated to be roughly twice the size of a typical adult killer whale. Such proportions suggest that evolution favored overwhelming force concentrated into a brief instant rather than prolonged chewing or repetitive grinding. The jaws did not need to remain clamped for extended periods while processing food. Instead, every aspect of their construction indicates a design centered upon one decisive closure. Thick muscles contracted simultaneously, reinforced bones resisted tremendous stress, and interlocking teeth transformed that closing motion into secure control over struggling prey. Unlike certain giant predators that swallow large animals largely intact, Livyatan appears to have processed its meals differently. Marks preserved on fossil bones attributed to large marine mammals from the same deposits indicate bites capable of removing substantial portions of flesh and bone. Rather than relying upon suction or engulfing prey whole, this hunter likely separated manageable pieces through repeated bites before swallowing them. Its feeding strategy demanded precision as much as strength, requiring the jaws to maintain an unwavering grip, while powerful neck muscles and body movements completed the task. Every structural detail contributed to that specialized function. The teeth penetrated deeply before their curved crowns resisted withdrawal. The roots anchored firmly within heavy bone, preventing loosening under repeated strain. Contact between opposing teeth formed an enclosed framework that restricted the movements of captured prey. Above them all, the massive skull distributed immense forces across broad surfaces, reducing the likelihood of structural failure during encounters with large, powerful animals. This architecture differs noticeably from that of the living sperm whale. Modern sperm whales obtain much of their food by capturing comparatively soft-bodied squid far beneath the surface, where suction and grasping play greater roles than forceful biting. Their skulls support different feeding mechanics, reflecting millions of years of adaptation to deep water hunting. Livyatan preserved the ancestral emphasis upon active predation near the surface, where prey fought with muscle, momentum, and bone rather than yielding after a single capture. Although no scientist can calculate the precise force produced by jaws whose muscles disappeared millions of years ago, the preserved anatomy consistently points in the same direction. Large attachment areas, reinforced cranial architecture, deeply rooted interlocking teeth, and broad mechanical leverage together describe an animal shaped for one highly specialized purpose. Every component worked in concert, transforming the closing of its jaws into one of the most formidable predatory actions ever achieved by a vertebrate descended from life on land. A predator is often best understood by looking not at its own bones, but at the lives of the animals around it. Every hunter is shaped by the prey available within its world. The communities preserved alongside Livyatan reveal an ecosystem filled with substantial marine vertebrates, creating opportunities unlike those found in today's oceans. Rather than pursuing small schooling fish alone, this ancient sperm whale occupied an environment where large, warm-blooded animals formed a dependable source of energy for those powerful enough to capture them. Evidence from the fossil record indicates that medium-sized baleen whales likely formed an important part of its diet. During the Miocene, most baleen whales had not yet reached the astonishing dimensions familiar today. The immense blue whales and fin whales of the modern world belong to a later chapter in whale evolution. Their ancestors generally measured between roughly 23 and 33 feet in length, placing them well below the greatest giants that now cross the oceans. Even so, they remained formidable animals with powerful tails, thick bodies, and substantial layers of protective tissue. Such prey should never be imagined as defenseless. A baleen whale measuring 30 feet outweighed every terrestrial predator that has ever lived and possessed tremendous swimming strength. Escaping danger depended upon speed, endurance, and the open water surrounding it. Capturing such an animal demanded not only overwhelming force, but careful timing, accurate positioning, and the ability to maintain control through violent resistance. Every anatomical feature already revealed by the skull and teeth points toward precisely that style of hunting. The coastal waters of the ancient Pisco embayment supported many additional targets. Fossils show that Miocene seals flourished in this productive marine habitat, resting along shorelines and foraging through nearby waters. These pinnipeds occupied ecological roles quite different from those of whales, yet they still represented rich packages of muscle and fat. Opportunistic predators rarely ignore abundant food sources, particularly when those animals regularly return to predictable feeding grounds. Smaller toothed whales also shared these seas. Some undoubtedly hunted fish, while others pursued squid or occupied specialized ecological niches. Their presence expanded the range of potential prey available to an apex hunter capable of overpowering marine mammals considerably smaller than itself. Competition among predators often creates complex interactions in which hunters occasionally become victims, especially when differences in body size strongly favor one participant. Large fishes likely contributed to the diet as well. Tuna, billfishes, and other swift swimmers had already diversified across many marine environments. Ancient sharks occupied similar waters, ranging from modest species to formidable carnivores. Juvenile sharks, injured adults, or smaller varieties would all have represented possible meals whenever opportunities arose. Marine turtles, protected by sturdy shells but relatively slow compared with agile whales, may also have fallen within the range of prey occasionally taken by such a versatile predator. Giant squid probably remained available despite the emphasis on vertebrate hunting. Their soft bodies required far less force to subdue than marine mammals, yet they offered substantial nourishment whenever encountered. A predator equipped to seize whales would have possessed little difficulty handling large cephalopods. Feeding flexibility often benefits apex carnivores by allowing them to exploit whatever resources become temporarily abundant. Viewed together, this collection of likely prey describes far more than a simple dietary list. It defines the ecological position occupied by Livyatan. Hypercarnivores obtain the overwhelming majority of their nourishment from other vertebrates, investing enormous anatomical resources into locating, capturing, and consuming animals rich in protein and fat. Livyatan fits that pattern with remarkable consistency. Its reinforced skull, immense biting teeth, and specialized jaws all correspond with a lifestyle centered upon large living prey rather than drifting food or small schooling animals. The surrounding ecosystem, therefore, becomes a reflection of the predator itself. An ocean capable of sustaining hunters like Livyatan first had to sustain abundant populations of whales, seals, fishes, turtles, and squid. Those thriving communities supported a carnivore positioned at the highest level of the marine food web, where nearly every large creature moving through the coastal waters could, under the right circumstances, become part of its next meal. Morning light spread across the Miocene Sea, much as it does across the oceans today, revealing broad migratory pathways followed by countless marine animals. Beneath that illuminated surface, Livyatan occupied a hunting world very different from the one inhabited by the modern sperm whale. Rather than descending into immense depths in search of squid, it remained within the upper layers of the ocean, where large air-breathing vertebrates traveled between feeding grounds, nursery areas, and coastal habitats. Every adaptation, preserved within its skull, points toward life in this dynamic realm of pursuit rather than the darkness of the abyss. Hunting near the surface demanded an entirely different collection of abilities. Visibility changed with shifting sunlight, waves scattered sound in complex ways, and prey could accelerate rapidly through open water with no seafloor to restrict movement. Success depended upon locating a target, matching its direction, and remaining close enough to exploit the brief moments when exhaustion began to overcome strength. Large whales possessed remarkable endurance, making every chase an energetic investment rather than a sudden attack. Many paleontologists have proposed that Livyatan may have employed hunting methods broadly comparable to those used by modern killer whales. Those living predators frequently pursue marine mammals until fatigue gradually limits their ability to resist. Repeated attacks interrupt breathing, disrupt coordinated swimming, and force prey into increasingly disadvantageous positions. Eventually, the exhausted animal becomes vulnerable to drowning or catastrophic injury. Although separated by millions of years and belonging to different branches of the whale family tree, Both predators occupied ecological roles that rewarded similar solutions to the challenge of subduing large marine mammals. Important differences nevertheless emerge from the anatomy. Killer whales usually depend upon coordinated family groups whose members divide tasks during complex hunts. Some individuals distract prey, while others deliver decisive attacks, combining communication, experience, and cooperation into remarkably sophisticated behavior. Livyatan appears to have relied more heavily upon individual physical capability. Its massive jaws, reinforced skull, and extraordinary dentition suggest that a single adult possessed enough strength to overpower prey that would require teamwork among smaller hunters. Small social groups remain entirely possible, yet the skeleton indicates that cooperation was not the only path to success. Once contact occurred, escape became increasingly difficult. The densely packed teeth curved slightly outward, creating a secure framework around any captured body part. Instinct naturally drives struggling animals to pull away from danger, but that reaction would have worked against them. Every powerful surge tightened the grip as the curved teeth resisted backward movement. Instead of slipping free, the prey risked embedding the teeth even more firmly within muscle and connective tissue. The struggle likely continued through repeated bursts of swimming, changes in direction, and attempts to reach the surface for air. Marine mammals cannot remain underwater indefinitely. Every interruption of normal breathing gradually shifts the balance toward the predator. Powerful tail strokes from both animals churned the surrounding water, while tremendous muscular forces passed through jaws and neck. Livyatan did not require perfect precision throughout the encounter. It needed only to maintain control long enough for exhaustion to accomplish what raw strength had begun. Its senses probably supported this demanding lifestyle with equal sophistication. Like living toothed whales, Livyatan almost certainly used echolocation to perceive its surroundings, producing focused sound pulses and interpreting returning echoes to estimate distance, size, and movement. Vision complemented this acoustic perception within the sunlit upper ocean, while a large brain likely coordinated information arriving from several sensory systems at once. Such integration allowed rapid adjustments during fast-moving pursuits where every change in speed or direction mattered. Evidence also suggests that these whales followed migratory prey across broad regions of the ocean. Seasonal movements of baleen whales, seals, and other marine animals would have created recurring opportunities that rewarded long-distance travel. Complex vocalizations probably maintained communication across those journeys, strengthening social bonds while helping individuals locate one another over considerable distances. The hunt therefore emerged from far more than brute force alone. It united perception, memory, endurance, precise anatomy, and carefully timed action into a single behavioral pattern. Livyatan pursued a way of life shaped by intelligence as much as strength, becoming one of the most specialized hunters ever to patrol the upper waters of the ancient sea. Some of the most important parts of an extinct animal leave no fossils at all. Muscle fades away, skin disappears, fat, cartilage, blood vessels, and specialized organs return to the natural cycles that produce them. Yet the bones beneath those vanished tissues sometimes preserve the spaces they once occupied with remarkable precision. In Livyatan, one such space rests along the top of the skull, inviting a question that has remained unanswered since the fossil first emerged from the rocks of southern Peru. This broad hollow is known as the supracranial basin. Earlier, its unusual size hinted that Livyatan carried something extraordinary above its skull rather than within it. Modern sperm whales provide the closest living comparison because the same region houses two remarkable soft tissue structures, the spermaceti organ and the melon. Although neither survives fossilization, the surrounding bones preserve the volume available for them, allowing paleontologists to infer that Livyatan almost certainly possessed comparable organs, even if their precise form differed. Among living animals, the spermaceti organ remains one of the most unusual anatomical structures ever evolved. In the modern sperm whale, it occupies an enormous portion of the head, accounting for as much as 1/4 of the animal's total body mass and extending through nearly 1/3 of its overall length. Filled with specialized waxes and oils enclosed within elaborate connective tissues, it transforms the head into something unlike that of any other mammal inhabiting the oceans. Exactly why such an immense structure evolved has inspired scientific discussion for generations. One traditional explanation proposes that changes in the physical properties of the organ's contents may assist deep diving by influencing buoyancy. Modern sperm whales routinely descend to extraordinary depths while pursuing squid, making this interpretation attractive for their particular lifestyle. Livyatan, however, appears to have spent much of its hunting life within the upper ocean while pursuing large marine vertebrates. If that reconstruction is correct, buoyancy regulation alone seems insufficient to explain the presence of such an extensive cranial structure. Another possibility centers upon sound. Living toothed whales depend heavily upon echolocation, producing focused acoustic pulses that travel through seawater before returning as echoes from surrounding objects. The spermaceti organ and melon work together as part of this remarkable biological system, shaping and directing sound with extraordinary precision. Livyatan almost certainly possessed sophisticated acoustic abilities, and its enlarged cranial basin may have housed structures capable of generating especially powerful signals suited to detecting large prey across considerable distances. Communication offers another intriguing interpretation. Whales exchange complex vocalizations that travel efficiently through seawater, carrying information far beyond the limits of vision. An enlarged spermaceti organ could have acted as an acoustic resonance chamber, enriching vocal displays used to maintain social relationships, coordinate movements, or advertise reproductive condition. Such behavior would suggest an animal whose interactions extended well beyond the immediate demands of hunting. Other researchers have proposed an even more physical role. Male sperm whales occasionally collide head-first during contests associated with reproduction, and the reinforced front of the skull may help absorb tremendous impact. Livyatan possessed exceptionally robust cranial bones, raising the possibility that its enlarged head functioned not only in sound production, but also during confrontations between rivals. Some have even suggested that forceful blows from the head might have assisted in subduing prey, although direct evidence for that behavior remains elusive. The shape of Livyatan's skull adds another layer to the mystery. Unlike the modern sperm whale, whose cranial basin extends forward above the eyes, Livyatan's basin is bordered by tall, bony walls that create a deeper, more enclosed structure. This difference implies that whatever occupied the space probably differed in geometry from the arrangement seen today. The same general organs may have been present, yet their proportions, orientation, or internal organization could have followed a distinctly separate evolutionary path. That uncertainty has become one of the most fascinating aspects of Livyatan itself. Every proposed function carries different implications for its behavior, sensory world, and daily life. Perhaps the organ emphasized echolocation above all else. Perhaps communication shaped its evolution. Perhaps physical combat influenced its remarkable proportions. It may even have combined several purposes within a single extraordinary structure. The fossil preserves the chamber with remarkable clarity, while the soft tissues that once filled it remain one of the ancient ocean's most enduring mysteries. Before a tooth could find its mark, another sense may already have shaped the encounter. Water carries sound with remarkable efficiency, allowing whales to perceive distant objects long before they become visible. Every modern toothed whale inhabits an acoustic world built from echoes, where bursts of sound travel outward, strike hidden obstacles, and return with information about distance, size, movement, and texture. Livyatan almost certainly shared this fundamental ability, yet the immense structures preserved within its skull have inspired a deeper question about whether sound served purposes extending beyond perception alone. The best supported explanation for the spermaceti organ remains closely connected to echolocation. In living sperm whales, sound originates within specialized respiratory structures inside the head. Those signals then pass through the spermaceti organ and the melon, where they are shaped into highly focused acoustic beams. The returning echoes provide an extraordinarily detailed picture of the surrounding environment, allowing a whale to navigate, locate prey, and judge distance even when vision contributes very little. This interpretation rests upon extensive anatomical study and observations of living animals, making it the strongest foundation for understanding the remarkable organs carried by their extinct relatives. Even within that well-established framework, intriguing possibilities have emerged. Sound powerful enough to detect prey also transfers energy into the surrounding water. Some researchers have therefore wondered whether exceptionally intense acoustic pulses might influence nearby animals directly, rather than simply revealing their location. The concept does not belong to imaginative fiction alone. It grows naturally from the unusual biology of toothed whales and from measurements demonstrating that modern sperm whales produce some of the most powerful biological sounds known in the animal kingdom. Field observations have shown that squid sometimes alter their behavior when exposed to nearby clicking whales. Interpreting those reactions remains challenging because underwater encounters are difficult to observe in detail, yet they demonstrate that acoustic signals can influence prey as well as inform the predator. Whether those effects arise through confusion, sensory overload, simple awareness of danger, or some combination of several factors continues to be investigated. The evidence does not establish sound as a weapon, but it illustrates that powerful acoustic emissions can shape interactions between hunter and prey. Extending this possibility to Livyatan requires careful restraint. Its enlarged cranial structures indicate substantial sound-producing capabilities, but the fossil cannot reveal the precise intensity, frequency, or directionality of the clicks it generated. Some paleontologists have suggested that an animal equipped with such an expansive acoustic apparatus might have produced concentrated bursts capable of briefly disorienting nearby prey immediately before physical contact. If so, even a momentary disruption of orientation could increase the effectiveness of the jaws waiting only a short distance away. Another possibility concerns communication rather than predation. Among living sperm whales, males generally possess larger spermaceti organs than females, suggesting that sexual selection may have influenced the evolution of these remarkable structures. Powerful acoustic displays could advertise physical condition, reproductive fitness, or social status across great distances. Livyatan may have used its enlarged cranial anatomy in similar ways, broadcasting calls that carried through coastal seas during seasonal movements or breeding gatherings. Under this interpretation, the same biological structure supported both survival and reproduction through different forms of sound. The distinctive shape of Livyatan's skull keeps every interpretation open. High bony walls enclose the supracranial basin in a manner unlike that seen in modern sperm whales, implying that the soft tissues within followed a somewhat different arrangement. Altered geometry may have changed the direction, resonance, or concentration of emitted sounds, although the fossil alone cannot determine exactly how those differences affected performance. Each anatomical clue encourages investigation while resisting certainty. For now, the idea of Livyatan using sound to disable prey remains speculative rather than established fact. It is grounded in authentic cetacean biology, supported by the extraordinary acoustic abilities of living-toothed whales, yet it extends beyond what the available fossil evidence can conclusively demonstrate. Even without a definitive answer, the possibility broadens the portrait of this ancient predator. Alongside immense teeth, powerful jaws, and sophisticated senses, it suggests that the first decisive moment of a hunt may have begun not with physical contact, but with a carefully directed pulse of sound moving invisibly through the sea. Few landscapes conceal their history as completely as a desert. Wind moves across bare hillsides, carrying fine dust through valleys where almost nothing suggests an ancient shoreline. Dry rock reflects the afternoon sun, and scattered outcrops reveal only fragments of the world hidden beneath. Yet, within the Peruvian desert lies one of the richest marine archives ever discovered, preserving an ocean that disappeared millions of years ago while leaving behind an astonishing record of the life that once filled it. That archive is known as the Pisco Formation. Stretching across portions of Peru's southern coast, it records a long sequence of marine environments deposited during the Cenozoic era. Layer upon layer accumulated as sediments settled onto the ancient seafloor, gently burying animals that died within these productive waters. Over immense spans of time, those sediments hardened into stone, protecting skeletons with exceptional fidelity. The result is one of the world's most remarkable collections of marine vertebrate fossils, offering an unusually complete view of an ancient coastal ecosystem. The productivity of these waters has deep roots, extending far beyond the present day. Today, the northward flowing Humboldt current transports cold, nutrient-rich water along the western margin of South America. Those nutrients fuel enormous blooms of microscopic plankton, supporting schools of sardines and countless other fishes that sustain seabirds, marine mammals, and large predators. Although the Miocene Ocean differed in important ways, geological evidence indicates that the ancient precursor of this same oceanographic system had already begun creating exceptionally fertile feeding grounds millions of years before modern coastlines assumed their present form. Paleontologists have studied fossils from numerous localities distributed throughout the Pisco Formation, assembling evidence from hundreds of marine vertebrates preserved across 16 separate fossil sites. Each locality contributes another piece to the ecological puzzle, revealing changes through time while also demonstrating remarkable continuity in marine productivity. Together, they form an unusually detailed record of whales, dolphins, seals, fishes, seabirds, reptiles, and predators, occupying interconnected habitats across a thriving coastal sea. Among these localities, Cerro Colorado holds particular importance because it yielded the specimen that formally defined Livyatan. Yet the famous predator represents only one participant within a much larger community. More than 300 fossil specimens have been recovered from this locality alone. Approximately 81% belong to cetaceans, reflecting extraordinary diversity among ancient whales. baleen whales, toothed whales, sperm whales, beaked whales, and early members of the dolphin lineage all shared these productive waters, each occupying distinct ecological roles while drawing energy from the same flourishing marine food web. The remaining fossils broaden that picture even further. Seals rested along nearby shores before returning to forage offshore. Crocodiles inhabited suitable coastal environments where fresh water met the sea. Marine turtles cruised between feeding areas, while seabirds circled above schools of fish concentrated by nutrient-rich currents. Bony fishes filled countless ecological niches, from small schooling species to formidable hunters. Sharks patrolled every level of the marine environment, adding still more complexity to an ecosystem already crowded with large vertebrates. At the foundation of this biological abundance stood immense populations of sardines and other small forage fishes. These seemingly modest animals converted microscopic plankton into concentrated energy that flowed upward through every level of the food web. Their seasonal abundance supported whales, seals, seabirds, sharks, and ultimately enormous apex predators. Unlike the modern Humboldt ecosystem, however, the Miocene version appears to have been dominated by exceptionally large carnivores. Livyatan shared these waters with megalodon, creating an environment where multiple gigantic hunters occupied overlapping ecological spaces supported by extraordinary productivity. Standing upon Cerro Colorado today, it is difficult to reconcile the landscape before the eye with the world preserved beneath its surface. Dry hills rise beneath open skies where rain seldom falls, and the nearest glimpse of the ancient sea exists only in imagination. Yet every fossil emerging from these rocks restores another fragment of that vanished coastline. Together, they reveal not isolated skeletons, but an entire living community, preserved with such richness that the stone itself has become a natural history collection, recording one of the most complete portraits of a Miocene ocean ever discovered. Very few moments in Earth's history place two predators of such extraordinary scale within the same marine ecosystem. Most ancient seas possessed a single dominant hunter whose presence shaped every level of the food web. The waters preserved within the Pisco Formation appear to tell a different story. Here, one immense predator swam with bone and lungs, while another moved through the same currents with cartilage and gills. Livyatan and megalodon occupied overlapping worlds, each representing a separate evolutionary path toward becoming the supreme hunter of the Miocene Ocean. Megalodon remains the most celebrated shark ever discovered. Known today as Otodus megalodon, it reached estimated lengths of roughly 50 to 66 feet, making it the largest predatory shark currently recognized by science. Its broad jaws carried rows of massive serrated teeth designed to slice through thick flesh and bone, while biomechanical studies indicate a bite force exceeding that of any other predator, yet reconstructed from the fossil record. Every aspect of its anatomy reflects an animal specialized for attacking large marine vertebrates, especially whales. Livyatan reached comparable overall dimensions through an entirely different design. It belonged to the mammalian lineage that had returned to the sea after distant terrestrial ancestors first explored shallow coastlines millions of years earlier. Warm-blooded physiology, complex social behavior, sophisticated hearing, and powerful lungs distinguished it from its enormous cartilaginous contemporary. Although both animals pursued large prey, they arrived at that ecological role through separate evolutionary histories, demonstrating how natural selection repeatedly produced giants when abundant resources rewarded exceptional size. The fossil evidence places both predators within the productive coastal waters represented by the Pisco Formation. Their coexistence raises an obvious ecological challenge. Two enormous carnivores, depending upon similar food sources, might be expected to compete so intensely that one eventually displaced the other. Yet the fossil record suggests a more intricate arrangement in which subtle differences reduced direct conflict while allowing both lineages to flourish for extended periods. Paleontologists often describe this pattern as niche partitioning. Species occupying the same environment frequently specialize upon different prey, different hunting grounds, different seasons, or different stages of life in order to reduce competition. Fossils recovered from the Sakako region indicate that megalodon may have concentrated heavily upon relatively small marine mammals, including the diminutive baleen whale, Pisco nana, as well as seals. Such prey still represented substantial meals, yet they differed noticeably from the larger whales that many researchers consider the principal targets of Livyatan. Diet probably changed with age as well. Young megalodon likely consumed smaller prey before gradually shifting toward larger marine mammals as body size increased. Comparable ontogenetic changes occur among many living predators, allowing juveniles and adults of the same species to exploit different ecological opportunities. Such flexibility would have further reduced competition within the ecosystem, distributing predatory pressure across numerous prey species rather than concentrating it upon a single population. Even with these distinctions, overlap almost certainly occurred. Injured whales, migrating marine mammals, abundant seasonal prey, or unexpected opportunities would have drawn both hunters toward the same feeding grounds. They may occasionally have scavenged the remains of one another's kills, a behavior widespread among modern carnivores whenever valuable food becomes available. Direct encounters between adult Livyatan and adult megalodon remain undocumented, yet the possibility cannot be dismissed within an ecosystem where both traveled through productive coastal waters. Their coexistence illustrates the remarkable richness of the Miocene Humboldt precursor. Sardines and other forage fishes supported immense populations of marine mammals, whose abundance in turn sustained multiple apex predators of extraordinary size. Energy flowed upward through a food web capable of supporting ecological giants that would seem almost improbable if known only from imagination. Neither predator existed in isolation. Each depended upon the productivity generated by ocean currents that nourished every level of the ecosystem beneath them. Seen together, Livyatan and megalodon represent one of evolution's most extraordinary convergences. One ruled with interlocking teeth anchored in massive jaws powered by mammalian muscle. The other relied upon serrated dentition and the streamlined efficiency perfected by ancient sharks. Different bodies, different ancestries, and perhaps different hunting specialties ultimately shared the same ancient coastline, creating one of the most formidable assemblies of marine predators the planet has ever sustained. An ecosystem reveals its greatest complexity at the very top. Herbivores often exist in vast numbers, and smaller predators may overlap across many habitats without exhausting available food. The highest hunters live under different constraints. They require enormous amounts of energy, reproduce slowly, and depend upon prey populations remaining healthy enough to sustain them. Whenever several apex predators occupy the same environment, the balance between competition and coexistence becomes one of the most revealing stories preserved within the fossil record. The ancient Peru current ecosystem appears to have achieved exactly such a balance. Fossil evidence indicates that Livyatan shared these productive coastal waters with megalodon and several other formidable carnivores rather than existing as the sole dominant hunter. That arrangement is scientifically important because it demonstrates that exceptionally productive oceans can support multiple predators occupying the highest trophic levels simultaneously, provided each exploits the available resources in slightly different ways. Livyatan almost certainly focused much of its hunting effort upon large marine mammals instead of relying primarily upon dense schools of smaller fishes. Such specialization demanded substantial energy, but also delivered exceptionally rich rewards. Thick layers of muscle and fat contained within whales and seals provided concentrated nourishment capable of sustaining a predator whose own body required immense daily resources. Pursuing prey of that scale represented a different ecological strategy from feeding upon countless smaller animals, even within an ocean where forage fishes remained extraordinarily abundant. Modern ecosystems provide imperfect but valuable comparisons. Around Antarctica, killer whales and leopard seals sometimes pursue similar prey species while reducing direct competition through differences in hunting depth, seasonal timing, habitat preference, and prey size. They occupy overlapping ecological roles without becoming identical competitors. Paleontologists believe comparable processes almost certainly operated within the Miocene Sea, although the particular species and environmental conditions differed substantially from those found in the modern Southern Ocean. The structure of marine mammal communities likely contributed to this ecological separation. Earlier in the Miocene, baleen whales generally remained smaller than the giants inhabiting today's oceans. Instead of only a few enormous species dominating marine biomass, many differently sized whales occupied intermediate ecological positions. This broader distribution of body sizes created multiple prey categories that could support several apex predators at once. A hunter specializing upon medium-sized whales might overlap only partially with another concentrating upon smaller cetaceans, seals, or younger individuals from larger species. Age introduced another dimension to this intricate balance. Young predators rarely occupy exactly the same ecological niche as mature adults. Juvenile Livyatan almost certainly differed from fully grown individuals in body size, swimming ability, and hunting experience. During those early years, they may have faced dangers no healthy adult encountered. A growing whale, still developing its immense strength, would have represented a more realistic target for an exceptionally large shark than a mature individual capable of defending itself with tremendous force. Whether adult Livyatan and adult megalodon directly attacked one another remains unknown. No fossil currently preserves an unmistakable record of combat between these extraordinary predators. Bite marks can reveal interactions, yet they seldom identify every participant with complete certainty. Scavenging further complicates interpretation because damage inflicted after death may resemble injuries received during life. The available evidence, therefore, encourages caution rather than dramatic conclusions. Even without confirmed battles, simple awareness of one another probably influenced behavior. Large predators often alter movement patterns, feeding choices, or habitat use in response to potential competitors. Such adjustments need not involve direct conflict. Avoiding unnecessary risk frequently benefits animals that require years to reach maturity and depend upon long lives to reproduce successfully. Natural selection often favors restraint as effectively as aggression whenever the costs of injury become exceptionally high. The resulting picture is neither a peaceful coexistence nor a perpetual struggle. Instead, it resembles an intricate ecological negotiation shaped by abundant prey, overlapping opportunities, and evolutionary specialization. Livyatan brought mammalian intelligence, complex acoustics, and overwhelming bite mechanics into this relationship. Megalodon contributed the efficiency of an immense shark, perfected through an entirely separate evolutionary history. Together, they occupied the summit of one of the richest marine ecosystems ever reconstructed, their shared presence illustrating how even the greatest predators ultimately depended upon the delicate organization of the living world beneath them. Stone records events differently than memory. It does not preserve motion, voices, or the unfolding sequence of a hunt. Instead, it keeps fragments. A tooth buried beside the bones of a whale, scratches worn across enamel after years of feeding, a skull resting among the remains of animals that once inhabited the same coastal waters. Paleontology assembles these scattered clues into a coherent history, not by witnessing the Miocene directly, but by reading the physical traces that ancient lives impressed upon the rock. Among the most informative fossils are teeth. Unlike many bones, teeth resist decay with remarkable durability, preserving microscopic patterns of wear produced during years of repeated feeding. A predator consuming soft-bodied prey leaves different evidence from one repeatedly biting through dense bone. Broken tips, polished surfaces, chipped edges, and replacement teeth all contribute information about behavior that cannot be recovered from the skeleton alone. These subtle details transform individual fossils into biological records, extending across an animal's lifetime. The surrounding fossils add another layer of evidence. Marine mammals preserved alongside megalodon teeth, Livyatan remains, seals, fishes, turtles, and numerous whale species reveal the ecological community occupying the ancient embayment. Rather than isolated discoveries scattered randomly through geological time, these specimens belong to an interconnected ecosystem whose structure can be reconstructed with increasing confidence. Every newly described fossil helps refine that picture, revealing which animals occupied the same habitats and which food resources were available to sustain them. Some researchers have suggested that encounters between Livyatan and megalodon occasionally extended beyond competition for shared prey. An exceptionally large mammalian predator armed with enormous cutting teeth might have been capable of attacking a shark under favorable circumstances. Conversely, a mature megalodon possessed jaws powerful enough to inflict devastating injuries upon almost any marine vertebrate, including another apex predator if the opportunity arose. Both possibilities have appeared within scientific discussion because neither contradicts the anatomical capabilities of the animals involved. Evidence supporting either direction, however, remains incomplete. No fossil currently demonstrates beyond reasonable doubt that Livyatan regularly hunted megalodon, nor does any specimen conclusively prove that megalodon commonly preyed upon Livyatan. Extraordinary ecological interactions require equally extraordinary evidence, and paleontology advances most reliably when conclusions remain proportional to the available data. The fossil record establishes possibility more readily than certainty, especially when reconstructing encounters between exceptionally rare predators. The biological differences separating these animals remain far less uncertain. Livyatan belonged to the mammalian lineage. It maintained a stable internal body temperature, breathed atmospheric air, nourished its young with milk, and almost certainly possessed advanced cognitive abilities comparable in many respects to those of living toothed whales. Complex acoustic communication, prolonged parental care, and sophisticated learning likely formed integral parts of its existence, shaping behavior in ways extending beyond immediate instinct. Megalodon followed an entirely different evolutionary tradition. As a shark, its skeleton consisted primarily of cartilage rather than bone, and its sensory world developed through structures refined across hundreds of millions of years of earlier fish evolution. Some evidence suggests that large lamniform sharks may have possessed elevated body temperatures relative to the surrounding water, improving swimming performance and expanding their ecological range. Even if megalodon shared this adaptation, its nervous system, reproductive biology, and behavioral organization remained fundamentally distinct from those of a marine mammal. These contrasting designs occupied the same productive embayment, nourished by the ancient precursor of the Humboldt Current. In many respects, that ecosystem resembled its modern descendant through abundant nutrient circulation and thriving marine life. One crucial distinction separated the Miocene Sea from the present coastline. Gigantic apex predators existed there in numbers and diversity unmatched by the modern Eastern Pacific, supported by prey communities capable of sustaining multiple hunters at the summit of the food web. The fossils confirm shared geography, overlapping time, and ecological competition. They reveal predators drawing energy from the same remarkably productive ocean while pursuing many of the same marine mammals. They cannot preserve every encounter that unfolded beneath the waves, yet coastlines, feeding grounds, and prey concentrations impose natural limits upon movement. Within an embayment crowded by life, the paths of these extraordinary hunters almost certainly crossed from time to time, leaving no direct witness except the enduring record carried forward in stone. Many scientific discoveries emerge through years of careful planning, but others arrive during moments that seem almost ordinary. Equipment is being packed away. Field notes are nearly complete. Vehicles wait to begin the journey home. Attention naturally shifts from searching toward leaving, yet the rocks remain unchanged by human schedules, holding their history with the same patience whether anyone is looking or not. Sometimes the final opportunity proves to be the most important one. During November of 2008, an international team of paleontologists worked among the fossil-bearing sediments of the Pisco Formation at Cerro Colorado, a locality situated roughly 22 miles southwest of the Peruvian city of Ica. Their field season had reached its conclusion. The expedition was drawing to an end, and preparations for departure had already begun. After days spent examining the surrounding outcrops, there seemed little reason to expect that the closing hours would produce anything fundamentally different from those before them. Among the researchers was Klaas Post of the Rotterdam Natural History Museum. As the team prepared to leave the site, his attention settled upon an unusual exposure emerging from the surrounding sediment. What might easily have remained another weathered fragment of rock revealed itself instead as part of an extraordinary skull. That simple decision to look once more transformed the final day of the expedition into one of the most significant moments in the study of ancient marine mammals. Excavation gradually exposed the fossilized remains concealed beneath the desert surface. The specimen included much of the skull, together with portions of the lower jaw and an exceptional collection of enormous teeth. Although incomplete, the preserved anatomy immediately distinguished the animal from every previously described fossil sperm whale. The jaws carried robust functional teeth in both the upper and lower portions of the mouth, unlike the specialized feeding apparatus of the modern sperm whale. Even before detailed scientific analysis began, the proportions suggested an animal unlike any living whale. The discovery represented the combined efforts of an international collaboration extending across several scientific institutions. Researchers associated with Utrecht University worked alongside colleagues from the Museum of Natural History in Paris, museums in Rotterdam, Pisa, Lima, and Brussels. Each institution contributed different expertise, from comparative anatomy and geology to fossil preparation and taxonomic study. Modern paleontology often advances through this kind of cooperation, where specialists from many countries combine their knowledge to reconstruct creatures that vanished millions of years before the existence of national borders. Geological analysis placed the fossil within sediments dating to approximately 12 to 13 million years before the present, during the late Miocene epoch. After excavation, the specimen underwent careful preparation in Lima, where technicians removed the surrounding rock grain by grain, exposing delicate anatomical details without damaging the fossil itself. Today, the remains form part of the collections of the Natural History Museum in Lima, where they continue to provide material for ongoing scientific investigation as new analytical methods become available. The significance of the specimen became apparent with remarkable speed. Paleontologists generally describe new discoveries with measured language, preferring careful comparison over dramatic claims. The anatomy of this whale, however, justified unusually strong conclusions. Here was a marine mammal possessing gigantic cutting teeth, an immense skull, and bite mechanics unlike those of any previously known sperm whale. As additional study progressed, researchers recognized that its bite represented the most powerful yet documented among tetrapods, a conclusion grounded in anatomy rather than exaggeration. The formal scientific description followed after years of detailed examination, introducing the world to a predator whose existence had remained unknown despite millions of years spent resting beneath the desert. Every measurement, comparison, and anatomical reconstruction expanded the portrait of an ecosystem already rich with extraordinary life. A single specimen became the key that unlocked an entire chapter of whale evolution previously hidden within stone. The circumstances surrounding the discovery remain almost as memorable as the fossil itself. An expedition nearing its conclusion, a final survey of the landscape, and one attentive observer were enough to recover an animal concealed beneath Peruvian sediments for roughly 12 million years. The ancient ocean had vanished long before human history began, yet on that last day of fieldwork, one of its greatest predators emerged once again into the world of living science. Names carry histories of their own. Long before a fossil receives formal description, it exists only as an unknown specimen resting within stone. One study reveals that it belongs to a previously unrecognized animal. Another task begins, choosing words that will represent that creature throughout the scientific literature. Those words often acknowledge anatomy, geography, or the people connected to a discovery. Occasionally, they also preserve echoes from literature, mythology, and the long human tradition of imagining worlds beyond ordinary experience. The giant predator, uncovered in the Peruvian desert, inspired exactly that kind of connection. Its immense skull, formidable dentition, and commanding place within the Miocene Ocean recalled one of the oldest marine creatures described in ancient tradition. The researchers responsible for formally describing the fossil selected the name Livyatan, drawn from the biblical sea monster whose immense power had remained part of human storytelling for thousands of years. The choice reflected not fantasy replacing science, but a symbolic bridge linking an extraordinary fossil with one of humanity's oldest images of the mysterious sea. The species name honored a different source of inspiration. Melvillei recognized Herman Melville, whose novel Moby Dick transformed the sperm whale into one of literature's most enduring figures. That 19th century story follows the pursuit of an immense white bull sperm whale across the world's oceans, blending natural history, philosophy, and adventure into a work that continues to influence readers far beyond its own era. For paleontologists fascinated by ancient whales, the connection possessed an unmistakable elegance. The scientists responsible for the description have explained that they admired Melville's novel and deliberately wished to recognize its influence. The symbolism reached even further than a simple literary dedication. A prehistoric whale capable of hunting other whales received a name honoring the author whose greatest work centered upon a whale. The relationship between the fossil and the novel formed an intentional tribute, connecting scientific discovery with a story that had already shaped public imagination for generations. Yet scientific names operate under rules every bit as rigorous as anatomical descriptions. Zoological taxonomy depends upon stability, ensuring that each formally recognized genus possesses a unique designation used consistently by researchers around the world. Duplicate names create confusion within scientific communication, making strict priority essential whenever different organisms receive formal classification. Even a beautifully chosen name cannot remain valid if another organism already bears it. After publication, researchers discovered precisely such a complication. The genus name, Livyatan, had already been assigned many years earlier to a fossil mastodon described during the 19th century. Although that earlier animal belonged to an entirely different branch of mammalian evolution, the existing designation prevented its reuse under the established rules governing zoological nomenclature. The conflict had nothing to do with the whale itself. It arose entirely from the requirement that every valid genus possess a distinct scientific identity. Rather than abandoning the original inspiration, the authors found a solution that preserved its meaning while satisfying taxonomic standards. They adopted the ancient Hebrew form of the same word, creating the genus name Livyatan. The pronunciation changed only slightly, while the symbolic reference remained intact. The prehistoric predator retained its connection to the legendary sea creature, now expressed through a spelling rooted more directly in the original language from which the tradition emerged. Within the ancient Book of Job, the creature called Livyatan appears as a being of overwhelming strength, whose fearsome mouth and encircling teeth symbolize untamed power beyond ordinary human control. Those descriptions were composed thousands of years before fossils revealed that gigantic predatory whales had once inhabited Earth's oceans. The resemblance between ancient imagery and the anatomy emerging from the Peruvian desert remained entirely coincidental, yet it offered a striking poetic harmony that the researchers clearly appreciated. Today, the name Livyatan melvillei carries layers of meaning extending far beyond biological classification alone. It preserves the discipline of scientific taxonomy, honors a landmark work of literature, acknowledges one of history's oldest maritime traditions, and identifies a predator whose existence was unknown until stone surrendered its carefully guarded secret. Through that single name, mythology, literature, and paleontology meet without diminishing one another, each enriching the remarkable story of an animal that truly lived beneath an ancient sea. A skull can introduce a species to science, yet a single skeleton rarely defines the full extent of an animal's existence. Ancient predators did not recognize coastlines or national borders. They followed shifting currents, migrating prey, and productive feeding grounds across oceans that connected distant shores into one immense living system. As additional discoveries emerged beyond Peru, the story of Livyatan expanded from a remarkable local find into something far broader, revealing a hunter whose influence reached across much of the ancient world. The specimen recovered from Cerro, Colorado, provided the anatomical foundation for recognizing the species, but isolated discoveries soon began appearing elsewhere. Massive fossil teeth recovered from widely separated coastlines shared the distinctive proportions expected of a giant macroraptorial sperm whale closely related to the Peruvian animal. Each new discovery represented only a fragment, yet together they outlined an astonishing geographic pattern extending far beyond a single embayment along the western margin of South America. Evidence from Chile strengthened the picture first. Along the Pacific coast, marine sediments of comparable age yielded teeth consistent with the same formidable lineage. Argentina contributed additional material from the opposite side of the continent, indicating that these predators occupied both Pacific and Atlantic waters surrounding southern South America. Such discoveries suggested that suitable habitat extended across an enormous marine realm, rather than remaining confined to one productive coastal ecosystem. Even more striking evidence arrived from far greater distances. Fossil teeth attributed to Livyatan, or a very closely related giant sperm whale, have been reported from California, demonstrating that these predators reached well into the northern hemisphere. A remarkable specimen recovered from Orange County matched the extraordinary dimensions expected from the Peruvian giant. The immense span separating California from Peru reflects not an isolated coincidence, but an ancient Pacific connected by continuous marine corridors through which powerful oceanic predators could travel over immense distances. South Africa added another important chapter. Fossils preserved within the collections of the Aziko South African Museum include two enormous teeth recovered from late Miocene deposits. One measures approximately 12 3/4 inches in length, while the other reaches nearly 12 inches. Their impressive size closely resembles the dentition known from the Peruvian specimen, reinforcing the interpretation that giant predatory sperm whales inhabited waters bordering the southern reaches of the African continent during the same broad interval of geological time. Australia provides another distant point within this growing network of discoveries. Although the available material remains more limited than the Peruvian skull itself, isolated teeth recovered from Australian deposits resemble those of Livyatan, or a closely allied form. When considered alongside fossils from South America, Africa, and Western North America, these remains reveal a distribution stretching across multiple ocean basins rather than a narrow regional range. Some paleontologists have proposed that certain isolated teeth may indicate survival of Livyatan itself or an extremely close relative into the Pliocene epoch roughly 5 million years before the present. Because isolated teeth preserve fewer anatomical details than complete skulls, assigning them confidently to a particular species remains challenging. Researchers therefore approach these specimens with appropriate caution, recognizing both their importance and their limitations. Even so, the repeated appearance of enormous macroraptorial sperm whale teeth across younger sediments suggests that this remarkable lineage persisted longer and occupied a broader geographic range than the original discovery alone could reveal. Viewed together upon a map, these fossil localities form an extraordinary pattern. Their distribution traces an almost continuous arc surrounding the Southern Ocean while extending northward into both the Pacific and Atlantic. Such a range reflects an animal fully adapted to long-distance movement across open marine environments. Like several living whales, it likely traveled wherever seasonal productivity and abundant prey created favorable conditions, crossing waters that today separate continents by thousands of miles. Each isolated tooth carries only a small fraction of the information preserved within an articulated skeleton, yet together they reveal something equally valuable. They demonstrate that the Peruvian skull was not the remains of an isolated curiosity confined to one forgotten coastline. Instead, It belonged to a lineage whose presence echoed across 5 continents, preserved within sediments deposited over millions of years. Long after the complete skeleton disappeared beneath ancient seas, its teeth continued marking distant shores, leaving a scattered but unmistakable record of one of the widest-ranging marine predators ever known. Sometimes an entire chapter of natural history rests inside a single object, small enough to hold in human hands. A lone fossil tooth cannot reveal the complete anatomy of the animal that carried it, yet its size, shape, wear, and geological setting can transform established ideas about evolution. One discovery made along the coast of southern Australia accomplished exactly that, extending the known story of Livyatan far beyond the limits suggested by the famous skull from Peru. During 2016, fossil enthusiast Murray Orr was searching the fossil-rich shoreline of Beaumaris Bay near Melbourne when he recovered an enormous tooth emerging from marine sediments. Even among the remarkable fossils for which the region is known, this specimen stood apart. Measuring roughly 12 inches in length, it became the largest fossil tooth ever discovered in Australia. Its immense proportions immediately suggested that it belonged to one of the greatest marine predators ever to inhabit the southern hemisphere. The sediments preserving the tooth date to approximately 5 million years before the present, placing the animal within the Pliocene epoch. By that time, the productive coastal ecosystem represented by the Peruvian Pisco Formation had already changed substantially from the environment in which the original Livyatan skull had lived. Yet this Australian specimen indicated that giant macroraptorial sperm whales, whether Livyatan itself or an exceptionally close relative, continued occupying southern oceans long after those earlier Peruvian communities had disappeared. The surrounding fossil record paints a vivid picture of the Australian coastline during that period. Megalodon still patrolled nearby waters, maintaining its position among the largest sharks in Earth's history. Early humpback whales traveled through the same marine corridors, while numerous other whales, seals, fishes, and seabirds contributed to a productive ecosystem sustained by nutrient-rich currents. The Australian tooth therefore represents far more than an isolated curiosity. It belongs to a thriving community in which several enormous marine vertebrates shared the same ocean. Its scientific importance rests first upon its age. Compared with the Peruvian skull, the Australian specimen is younger by roughly 4 to 7 million years. That interval substantially expands the known duration of this remarkable predatory lineage. Rather than disappearing alongside ecological changes within one celebrated fossil locality, these giant whales evidently persisted across vast stretches of geological time, adapting to marine environments that continued evolving around them. The tooth also offers intriguing clues about body size. One scientist who examined the Beaumaris specimen suggested that it may have belonged to an individual approaching roughly 59 feet in length. Even more interestingly, the proportions hinted that the animal could have been a subadult rather than a fully mature individual. If that interpretation proves correct, the largest adults within the same population may have reached even greater dimensions after completing their growth. Evidence from South America strengthens that possibility. An enormous tooth recovered from Chile has been used in anatomical scaling studies, estimating that its owner may have approached approximately 69 feet in total length. Such estimates remain provisional because complete skeletons of comparable size have not yet been discovered, and tooth dimensions cannot predict body length with absolute precision. Nevertheless, the calculations rely upon established relationships observed among closely related sperm whales, and therefore provide scientifically plausible upper limits rather than unsupported speculation. Should future discoveries confirm those estimates, the largest members of this ancient lineage would have exceeded the size of the greatest sperm whales alive today, while retaining the formidable cutting dentition characteristic of macroraptorial sperm whales. Such animals would represent not merely oversized versions of living whales, but predators combining exceptional body length with a feeding apparatus unlike that of any modern cetacean. The Bomari's tooth therefore accomplished something remarkable, despite consisting of only a single fossil. It broadened the geographic range already hinted at by discoveries scattered across several continents, extended the probable survival of the lineage into younger geological deposits, and suggested that some individuals may have reached extraordinary sizes. Each newly recovered tooth has gradually reshaped the outline of Livyatan's history, revealing a predator whose true story stretches farther across oceans and deeper through time than the original discovery alone could ever have revealed. Every reconstruction begins with something incomplete. A paleontologist does not uncover an ancient animal already assembled beneath the earth, waiting to be measured from nose to tail. More often, the evidence arrives in fragments, separated by time, erosion, and chance. A skull may survive while the spine disappears. Teeth may endure after every other bone has dissolved away. From those surviving pieces, scientists patiently estimate the proportions of an animal that has not walked, swum, or breathed for millions of years. Livyatan presents exactly this challenge. The celebrated Peruvian specimen preserves a remarkably informative skull, together with portions of the lower jaw and its extraordinary teeth, yet almost nothing from the remainder of the skeleton. As a result, every estimate of total body length depends upon anatomical comparison rather than direct measurement. Researchers examine the relationships between skull size and body proportions in living sperm whales, as well as extinct relatives, then apply those patterns carefully to the fossil. This approach represents the best available scientific method, while also acknowledging its unavoidable limits. Using these comparisons, the type specimen has been estimated to measure approximately 44 to 57 feet in length, with a body mass ranging between roughly 44 and 63 tons. Those figures already describe an immense marine predator whose dimensions rival the largest toothed animals ever known. Even the most conservative estimates place Livyatan among the greatest carnivorous vertebrates in Earth's history, combining exceptional size with massive functional teeth unlike those of any living whale. Yet those familiar numbers should never be mistaken for exact measurements. They are informed reconstructions rather than observations taken from a complete skeleton. If future discoveries reveal that Livyatan possessed slightly different body proportions than modern sperm whales or other extinct relatives, those estimates could change accordingly. Scientific knowledge remains flexible because new evidence has the power to refine even the most carefully developed conclusions. The isolated teeth recovered from South Africa, Australia, and Chile introduce another intriguing possibility. Some of these specimens exceed expectations based upon the dimensions of the original Peruvian skull. Because teeth generally scale with body size, unusually large examples may indicate individuals surpassing the dimensions of the known type specimen. Such interpretations remain cautious, since isolated teeth cannot reveal every aspect of an animal's anatomy, but they encourage researchers to consider that the largest Livyatan individuals may not yet have been discovered. One interpretation proposed for the remarkable Australian tooth suggested an animal approaching roughly 59 feet in length, despite the possibility that it belonged to a subadult still growing toward full maturity. If that assessment proves accurate, fully developed adults from the same population may have reached even greater dimensions before completing their lives. Comparable reasoning has also been applied to an exceptionally large Chilean tooth, with anatomical scaling studies estimating a possible body length approaching roughly 69 feet. Such estimates occupy the frontier between evidence and informed inference. They are neither arbitrary speculation nor established fact. Instead, they represent scientifically grounded hypotheses, awaiting additional fossils capable of confirming or revising them. This distinction lies at the heart of paleontology. Reliable science advances by recognizing uncertainty openly rather than concealing it behind unwarranted confidence. Even without adopting the largest proposed estimates, Livyatan already occupies extraordinary biological territory. At the upper range, calculated for the type specimen, it exceeds every other known predator possessing functional teeth of comparable size. If future discoveries support the larger interpretations suggested by isolated teeth, the animal would enter a scale almost without parallel among living marine predators, leaving modern sperm whales as only partial points of comparison rather than true equivalents. The remaining uncertainty reflects neither weakness nor failure within scientific investigation. Instead, it arises from the remarkable rarity of the fossil record itself. One exceptional skull introduced this predator to the world. Scattered teeth recovered across distant continents continue expanding its story piece by piece. Somewhere beneath ancient sediments, additional skeletons may still await discovery, preserving the missing proportions that will eventually reveal how large Livyatan truly became. Until then, the known evidence remains both substantial and incomplete, inviting careful curiosity rather than absolute certainty. Long before jaws closed around prey, another force moved outward through the sea. It traveled faster than any swimming animal, curved around underwater landscapes, crossed immense distances, and carried information impossible to perceive with sight alone. For a giant predatory sperm whale, the ocean was shaped as much by sound as by water. Every movement, every distant body, and every companion existed within an invisible acoustic landscape extending far beyond the reach of vision. Modern sperm whales demonstrate the extraordinary potential of that world. They produce the loudest biological sounds ever measured, generating echolocation clicks that may exceed roughly 230 decibels at their source. Those powerful signals can travel across hundreds of miles through favorable ocean conditions before fading into the surrounding sea. Such remarkable acoustic performance allows living sperm whales to navigate darkness, locate prey, and exchange information over distances that would be impossible through vision alone. The fossil anatomy of Livyatan strongly indicates that it relied upon the same fundamental biological system. Its skull preserves the broad supracranial basin that once supported the immense spermaceti organ, together with the surrounding soft tissues involved in directing and receiving sound. Although those delicate organs themselves disappeared millions of years ago, the bony structures that anchored them remain preserved with enough detail to reveal their essential arrangement. The architecture belongs unmistakably to an animal whose life depended upon sophisticated acoustic perception. Within living sperm whales, the spermaceti organ functions as part of a remarkable sound-producing system. Filled with specialized waxes and oils possessing lower density and greater compressibility than the surrounding seawater, the organ creates strong acoustic contrast that enhances resonance. Vibrations generated within the nasal passages pass through these tissues before being focused into powerful directional clicks. The melon then helps shape and project those sounds into the surrounding water, creating an extraordinarily effective biological sonar. Everything known about Livyatan suggests that this system existed on an even grander scale. Its skull exceeds that of most living sperm whales in breadth and robustness, providing space for an exceptionally large supracranial basin. If the associated soft tissues expanded proportionally, the resonant chamber responsible for generating acoustic energy would likewise have been larger. Basic physical principles indicate that greater resonating volume can support greater acoustic output, making it highly probable that Livyatan produced sounds surpassing those generated by modern sperm whales. Absolute certainty remains beyond reach because soft tissue never fossilized alongside the skull. Scientists therefore avoid assigning exact sound levels to an extinct species. Even so, comparative anatomy provides compelling evidence that a whale possessing a larger sound-producing apparatus than any living sperm whale almost certainly generated correspondingly greater acoustic power. The conclusion rests not upon imagination, but upon the relationship between preserved skeletal anatomy and the functioning of its closest living relatives. Sound also served purposes extending beyond hunting. Living sperm whales exchange patterned click sequences known as codas, distinctive vocal rhythms that appear to identify individuals, coordinate social groups, and maintain communication across great distances. Different populations possess recognizable acoustic traditions, almost resembling regional dialects passed from one generation to the next. Such complexity reveals that these whales inhabit an elaborate social world carried almost entirely through sound. No fossil can preserve an ancient coda, yet the close evolutionary relationship between Livyatan and modern sperm whales makes comparable communication entirely plausible. Enormous predators, separated by miles of open water, may have announced their presence through patterned sequences echoing across the Miocene Sea. Family groups could have maintained contact beyond the limits of sight, while individuals identified companions through familiar acoustic signatures carried beneath the waves. Before any pursuit ended with teeth and muscle, another encounter had already unfolded. Pulses of concentrated sound reached outward, reflected from distant bodies, and returned bearing detailed information about shape, distance, and movement. Long before physical contact became possible, the surrounding ocean had already revealed itself through echoes. In the life of Livyatan, overwhelming force began not with the bite, but with an acoustic world whose immense power spread through water in every direction. No predator exists alone. Every successful hunter becomes part of a larger pattern, influencing animals it never catches as much as those it does. The greatest predators reshape entire ecosystems through their presence alone, altering movement, behavior, reproduction, and survival across many different species. Their influence spreads outward through the food web in ways that often remain invisible until they disappear. Livyatan occupied exactly such a position within the Miocene Ocean, serving not merely as one hunter among many, but as a powerful architect of the marine communities surrounding it. Its preferred prey consisted largely of other marine mammals, particularly medium-sized baleen whales that shared the productive coastal waters sustained by powerful upwelling currents. Every successful hunt removed an individual from the breeding population while simultaneously reducing competition among survivors for food and habitat. This continual process prevented any single prey population from expanding without limit, helping preserve ecological balance within an environment already crowded with enormous vertebrates. Modern ecosystems provide familiar examples of this principle. Living killer whales influence seals, dolphins, porpoises, and even the largest baleen whales through direct predation and the constant possibility of attack. Their effects extend well beyond the animals they actually kill. prey species modify migration timing, alter feeding locations, avoid particular coastlines, and adjust social behavior according to where predators are most likely to appear. These changes ripple throughout the surrounding ecosystem, influencing countless interactions among species. Livyatan almost certainly produced comparable effects upon the Miocene seas. Large baleen whales did not simply search for the richest feeding grounds, they also needed to survive long enough to reproduce. A region abundant with food, but frequently visited by giant predatory sperm whales, may have become less attractive despite its nutritional advantages. Over many generations, such decisions could gradually influence migration routes, seasonal movements, and the geographic distribution of entire whale populations. Evidence from the Pisco embayment suggests an ecosystem especially suited to these complex relationships. During the early portion of the Tortonian Age, vigorous coastal upwelling supported exceptional biological productivity. Dense concentrations of small schooling fishes sustained numerous marine mammals, seabirds, sharks, and other predators. The abundance of available food encouraged many mesopredators to establish permanent populations rather than merely passing through during seasonal migrations. Some species appear to have used these protected waters as breeding grounds or nursery areas where calves and juveniles spent their earliest stages of life. Yet those same nursery waters existed beneath the range of Livyatan. Young whales represented smaller, slower, and more vulnerable targets than healthy adults. Mothers caring for calves faced difficult choices between accessing abundant food and reducing the danger posed by large predators. Even if attacks occurred infrequently, the possibility alone could influence where families gathered, how long they remained, and which routes they followed when entering or leaving productive coastal habitats. Ecologists describe this phenomenon as a landscape of fear. The phrase refers not to constant pursuit, but to the persistent influence predators exert simply by existing within an environment. Animals living under predation pressure continuously evaluate risk alongside opportunities for feeding, mating, and raising offspring. Their decisions reshape patterns of movement across entire ecosystems. Although the term itself belongs to modern ecological science, the biological process is far older than humanity. Within the Miocene Ocean, such invisible geography likely extended across immense distances. Certain channels, embayments, and feeding grounds may have carried greater danger than others, depending upon where giant predators hunted most successfully. Baleen whales that recognized those patterns would have gained advantages measured not in comfort, but in survival and reproductive success. Over thousands of generations, natural selection reinforced behaviors that balanced nourishment with caution. Livyatan therefore influenced far more than the fate of individual prey animals. By regulating marine mammal populations, altering habitat use, and shaping the daily decisions of species sharing its world, it helped organize the structure of entire ocean communities. Its legacy was written not only in fossils bearing tooth marks, but also in migration pathways, nursery locations, and feeding behaviors repeated across countless generations. The greatest predators leave behind more than evidence of what they consumed. They leave enduring patterns woven into the living fabric of the ecosystems they once ruled. No species remains unchanged when the planet itself begins to change. Continents drift almost imperceptibly, mountains rise grain by grain, and oceans alter their circulation over spans so vast that countless generations pass before the transformation becomes visible. Livyatan evolved during an age of exceptional marine abundance, yet the conditions that supported such extraordinary predators were never permanent. Across millions of years, the foundations of that ancient world gradually shifted beneath the surface. The warm interval, known as the mid-Miocene climatic optimum, had reached its height roughly 15 million years before the present. During that period, global temperatures remained considerably warmer than those experienced today, supporting widespread marine productivity and diverse whale communities across many ocean basins. As time continued, however, the climate entered a prolonged cooling trend. This change unfolded gradually rather than suddenly, but its direction proved remarkably persistent. The oceans slowly began moving toward a fundamentally different state. Evidence preserved within marine sediments and polar ice indicates that major ice sheets expanded across West Antarctica beginning approximately 13 million years before the present. By the closing stages of the Miocene epoch, glaciation had become firmly established across the continent. Vast quantities of water became locked within expanding ice, influencing global sea levels while strengthening the production of cold, dense water sinking into the deep ocean. These changes affected marine circulation far beyond the Antarctic coastline itself. As colder water masses spread through the world's oceans, established circulation patterns reorganized. Currents that had once transported warmth and nutrients along familiar pathways gradually shifted position or changed strength. Regions previously characterized by stable surface productivity experienced new seasonal rhythms, while other areas became increasingly dominated by colder deep water rising toward the surface. The living geography of the ocean began rearranging itself in response to a changing climate. Among the most remarkable geological events of this era was the Mycenaean salinity crisis, beginning around 6 million years before the present. During this interval, tectonic activity restricted the connection between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Evaporation exceeded the inflow of seawater, causing large portions of the Mediterranean basin to lose enormous volumes of water. Vast salt deposits accumulated across the basin floor, while rivers carved deep valleys into landscapes that had once rested beneath the sea. Although geographically distant from the eastern Pacific, this event reflected a planet whose ocean circulation had become increasingly unstable. The productive upwelling systems supporting the ancient Peruvian ecosystem also changed through time. For millions of years, they had delivered nutrient-rich deep water toward the surface, sustaining immense populations of fishes, seabirds, marine mammals, and the predators that depended upon them. As circulation patterns shifted under cooler climatic conditions, the strength and location of these upwelling systems likely changed as well. Their remarkable biological productivity did not vanish entirely, but it became less predictable and less expansive than during earlier intervals. Such changes carried profound consequences for baleen whales. Many species relied upon dense, seasonal concentrations of plankton and small schooling fishes generated by highly productive marine environments. As ocean temperatures declined and circulation patterns evolved, the diversity, geographic distribution, and body sizes of some baleen whale populations appear to have diminished. Different species responded in different ways, with some adapting successfully, while others became increasingly restricted to favorable habitats. For a predator the size of Livyatan, these ecological adjustments held particular importance. Estimates for the known type specimen suggest an animal weighing roughly 44 to 63 tons, requiring enormous quantities of energy simply to maintain its daily metabolism. Its preferred prey consisted of marine mammals that themselves represented substantial reservoirs of living biomass. Supporting even a modest population of such predators demanded an ecosystem capable of producing exceptional abundance year after year. The cooling world did not remove food from the ocean in a single moment. Instead, it gradually reduced the richness upon which giant predators depended. Productive feeding grounds became less dependable. Prey populations shifted, and ancient marine communities reorganized beneath changing currents. Livyatan remained one of the greatest hunters ever to inhabit the sea. Yet even the largest apex predator ultimately lived within boundaries established by climate, circulation, and the immense biological engine of the ocean itself. Every great predator lives within an equation written by its environment. Strength, speed, intelligence, and powerful jaws offer little advantage if the surrounding ecosystem can no longer supply enough food. The largest hunters occupy the narrowest margin because each day demands an enormous investment of energy. Their survival depends not upon a single successful hunt, but upon a landscape rich enough to support many successful hunts across an entire lifetime. For Livyatan, that balance gradually became more difficult to maintain. Its preferred prey consisted largely of medium-sized baleen whales, animals substantial enough to reward the tremendous effort required to capture them. A predator weighing roughly 44 to 63 tons could not survive by pursuing countless small fishes or scattered marine mammals. Its anatomy reflected specialization, from immense teeth designed for gripping large bodies to powerful jaws capable of inflicting devastating wounds. Every feature pointed toward prey of considerable size. The mathematics of such a lifestyle leaves little room for ecological decline. As prey becomes less abundant, the distance between successful hunts increases. More time must be spent searching. Greater energy is consumed during travel. Failed pursuits become increasingly costly because each attempt draws upon limited reserves while yielding no nourishment in return. Eventually, even an animal perfectly adapted for hunting may reach a point where the energy invested consistently exceeds the energy recovered. Changes within baleen whale communities likely pushed the ancient ocean toward precisely this condition. During much of the Miocene epoch, many baleen whale species remained considerably smaller than the gigantic filter feeders familiar today. These medium-sized whales occupied an ecological range well suited to a predator such as Livyatan. As global cooling progressed and environmental conditions continued shifting, however, that community changed profoundly. With the onset of extensive glaciation across the northern hemisphere, numerous smaller baleen whale lineages disappeared from the fossil record, while other groups experienced substantial declines. The consequences extended beyond simple reductions in species numbers. Entire ecological relationships unraveled as familiar prey became less common and surviving whale communities assumed different forms. The specialized hunting strategies that had served Livyatan successfully for millions of years may have become increasingly difficult to sustain within an ocean whose biological foundations were steadily reorganizing. The remarkable fossil record preserved within the Pisco Formation captures both sides of this transformation. Older deposits reveal extraordinary biological richness. Dense schools of sardines supported abundant seals, seabirds, crocodilians, sharks, dolphins, and numerous whale species occupying different ecological roles. Among these diverse marine mammals moved both Livyatan and megalodon, each exploiting different opportunities within an ecosystem capable of sustaining multiple apex predators simultaneously. Younger layers tell another story. Marine communities became increasingly dominated by wide-ranging rorquals, the great filter feeding whales whose anatomy emphasized efficient travel between distant feeding grounds rather than the smaller coastal lifestyles characteristic of many earlier species. Diversity within the vertebrate assemblage shifted noticeably. The productive embayment recorded in older deposits gradually gave way to a broader, more open marine environment, shaped by changing circulation patterns and evolving food webs. For Livyatan, these changes represented more than altered scenery. They transformed the availability of suitable prey. An ecosystem increasingly dominated by large migratory rorquals differed fundamentally from one containing numerous resident, medium-sized baleen whales. Hunting opportunities became organized around different species, displaying different behaviors across wider geographic ranges. The predator remained magnificently adapted to its ancient niche, even as that niche itself slowly disappeared. Megalodon appears to have faced comparable pressures, although its hunting methods differed substantially from those of Livyatan. Both giants depended upon abundant marine mammals occupying productive coastal ecosystems. As those ecosystems contracted and prey communities changed, each predator encountered the same relentless ecological reality. Neither disappeared because either species became weaker or less effective. Instead, the world supporting both gradually withdrew the biological abundance upon which their immense bodies depended. In the end, the greatest hunters of the Miocene were limited not by the power they possessed, but by the changing ocean that could no longer sustain them. Extinction does not always arrive with fire, ash, or sudden darkness. Sometimes it advances so gradually that no single generation could recognize it while living through the change. Coastlines remain familiar. Waves continue reaching the shore. The seasons return as they always have, yet beneath those familiar rhythms, countless small shifts accumulate until an ancient way of life can no longer continue. Livyatan appears to have reached its end through precisely this kind of transformation, fading with the changing ocean that had once allowed it to flourish. The youngest known evidence attributed to this remarkable predator comes from the immense tooth recovered at Beaumaris Bay in southern Australia. Geological dating places that specimen at approximately 5 million years before the present. It stands as the latest confirmed chapter in a lineage that had once ranged across broad regions of the world's oceans. Beyond that point, the fossil record offers no additional teeth, no skulls, and no unmistakable traces of Livyatan. Absence within the fossil record must always be interpreted carefully. Fossilization is an uncommon event, and many species almost certainly existed without leaving abundant remains. Even so, the disappearance of Livyatan from younger marine deposits across multiple continents strongly suggests that its lineage had reached extinction by the close of the early Pliocene epoch. The evidence grows not from a single missing fossil, but from a persistent pattern repeated across many well-studied formations. The cause appears consistent with the environmental changes unfolding throughout the oceans during the same interval. Cooling climates altered circulation patterns, productive coastal ecosystems shifted, and the communities of marine mammals upon which Livyatan depended became increasingly different from those that had sustained it for millions of years. Its preferred prey declined in diversity, while many familiar species disappeared altogether. The ecological foundation supporting such a specialized predator gradually weakened beneath it. Seals, dolphins, and numerous whale species also experienced the consequences of these changing seas. Fluctuating water temperatures and reorganized ocean currents reshaped food availability throughout marine ecosystems. Some populations contracted into smaller ranges, others vanished entirely, while still others evolved toward different ecological strategies better suited to the new conditions. Each loss echoed upward through the food web, reducing the abundance of large marine mammals available to the greatest hunters. Livyatan probably endured these changes longer than many of the prey species upon which it had long depended. Apex predators often persist after ecological decline has already begun because they can continue surviving upon shrinking resources for a time. Eventually, however, the balance becomes impossible to maintain. Each successful hunt becomes more difficult to achieve, each breeding season more uncertain, and each generation smaller than the one before. The predator briefly outlasts the abundance that created it, then follows as the final chapter of a disappearing ecosystem. The disappearance of such a dominant hunter did not instantly restore the marine communities it once influenced. Ecosystems, shaped by millions of years of predation, carry deep evolutionary memories. Migration routes, breeding behavior, habitat selection, and population structure develop under constant ecological pressures that cannot be erased in a single geological moment. The departure of an apex predator creates another period of adjustment rather than an immediate return to some earlier condition. There is a remarkable contrast between the immense power preserved within the fossils of Livyatan and the nature of the force that ultimately overcame it. Massive teeth remained perfectly suited for gripping large prey. Powerful jaws retained their crushing strength. Sophisticated acoustic organs likely continued revealing distant animals through echoes carried beneath the waves. None of those adaptations could reverse changing climate, reorganize ocean currents, or restore vanished food webs. In the end, Livyatan was not defeated by a larger predator, a catastrophic impact, or a sudden global disaster. Its story concluded because the world that had shaped its evolution slowly became a different ocean. The greatest predatory mammal known from Earth's history yielded not to another set of teeth, but to gradual shifts in temperature, circulation, and living abundance that unfolded across millions of years until there was no longer a place where such a giant could endure. Not every branch of an ancient family ends when the world changes. Sometimes one lineage disappears while another continues, carrying familiar features into an entirely different way of life. The contrast between Livyatan and the modern sperm whale reveals one of the most remarkable evolutionary departures preserved within the fossil record. Their shared ancestry is unmistakable, yet the paths they followed eventually led toward opposite oceans. As the coastal ecosystems supporting giant macroraptorial sperm whales became less favorable, another branch of the family had already begun pursuing a different opportunity. Instead of remaining a hunter of large marine mammals near the surface, the ancestors of the living sperm whale increasingly specialized for life far below the reach of sunlight. Their future depended less upon powerful bites delivered against massive prey and more upon endurance, navigation, and the ability to explore one of the least accessible habitats on Earth. Today, the modern sperm whale performs the deepest confirmed dives of any mammal. Individuals have descended to depths exceeding approximately 9,800 feet, remaining beneath the surface for well over an hour before returning to breathe. At those extraordinary depths, sunlight has vanished completely. Pressure rises to crushing levels, temperatures remain near freezing, and the familiar colors of the upper ocean disappear into permanent darkness. It is a realm profoundly different from the productive coastal waters that once supported Livyatan. Vision alone offers little advantage in such an environment. Instead, the modern sperm whale depends upon powerful echolocation. Concentrated clicks travel outward through the surrounding water, reflecting from squid and other distant animals before returning as detailed echoes. Every dive becomes an acoustic exploration, allowing the whale to perceive shape, distance, movement, and direction without relying upon light. The remarkable sound-producing anatomy inherited from ancient ancestors found a new purpose within the deep ocean rather than the sunlit surface. Its feeding apparatus also changed dramatically through evolutionary time. The upper teeth became vestigial and rarely emerge through the gums. The lower teeth remain functional, yet they serve primarily to grip slippery prey instead of slicing through thick flesh. Modern sperm whales consume overwhelmingly cephalopods, especially large squid inhabiting the deep sea. Rather than overpowering other whales through force, they capture soft-bodied animals that require a completely different style of hunting. Placed beside one another, Livyatan and the living sperm whale almost appear to represent opposite solutions to survival. One evolved immense cutting teeth in both jaws for attacking large marine mammals. The other reduced its upper dentition while specializing for grasping squid. One dominated productive surface waters rich with whales and seals. The other descended into the deep ocean, exploiting prey largely unavailable to giant coastal predators. Their anatomies reflect these contrasting ecological roles with remarkable clarity. Despite those profound differences, the connection between them remains visible. Both inherited the distinctive box-shaped head characteristic of sperm whales. Both possessed the broad supracranial basin supporting the extraordinary sound-producing system. Both relied upon a large spermaceti organ that enhanced acoustic performance within their respective environments. Those shared features trace their ancestry back through approximately 10 million years of evolutionary divergence, linking two very different predators to a common origin. The survival of the modern sperm whale illustrates an important principle repeated throughout Earth's history. Evolution rarely rewards strength alone. It favors organisms capable of exploiting opportunities that remain available as environments continue changing. When cooling climates reshaped surface ecosystems and altered the distribution of large marine mammals, the deep ocean remained comparatively stable. Giant squid continued inhabiting immense depths, largely insulated from many of the ecological shifts transforming coastal food webs. The living sperm whale therefore endured, not because it resisted planetary change more successfully than Livyatan, but because its ancestors gradually embraced a different ecological strategy long before those changes reached their greatest extent. One lineage remained tied to an ancient abundance that slowly disappeared. The other followed a quieter path into the depths, where an entirely different source of food sustained it through a changing world and into the oceans we know today. Long before people gave names to oceans, wrote novels, or built ships capable of crossing entire seas, the evolutionary story leading toward the modern sperm whale had already begun. Generation followed generation across immense spans of geological time, carrying inherited anatomy through changing climates, shifting continents, and countless extinct relatives. That continuous biological thread eventually reached human history, where an ancient lineage became part of literature, commerce, exploration, and scientific discovery. During the age of commercial whaling, sperm whales occupied a unique place in human imagination. Unlike many other whales pursued for oil, they possessed enormous foreheads containing the remarkable spermaceti organ, an anatomical structure already present in their distant relatives millions of years earlier. Whalers extracted vast quantities of spermaceti oil from these organs, refining it into a valuable resource prized for its clean burning qualities and remarkable stability. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, lamps fueled by this oil illuminated homes, libraries, laboratories, workshops, and meeting halls across Europe and the United States. By that light, scholars examined fossils, naturalists organized collections, philosophers composed essays, and writers transformed experience into enduring stories. The same evolutionary innovation that once served ancient whales beneath the sea unexpectedly became part of human civilization above it. An organ shaped by natural selection for life in the ocean found a second role through human industry, linking biological history with cultural development in ways its original owners could never have anticipated. Encounters between people and living sperm whales also entered maritime legend. Historical records describe several extraordinary incidents in which large sperm whales struck whaling vessels with tremendous force. The most famous of these events involved the whale ship Essex during the early 19th century, when a powerful ram from an adult sperm whale ultimately contributed to the vessel's destruction. Such accounts spread widely among sailors and readers, gradually becoming woven into the folklore of the sea. From those events emerged one of the most influential novels ever written about the ocean. Herman Melville drew inspiration from real encounters between whalers and sperm whales when creating Moby Dick. The immense white whale at the heart of the novel belongs not to fantasy, but to the same living lineage that diverged from the ancestors of Livyatan millions of years earlier. Although separated by deep evolutionary time, both animals shared the distinctive head shape, sophisticated acoustic anatomy, and common ancestry inherited from ancient macroraptorial sperm whale relatives. That literary connection eventually returned to paleontology. When researchers formally described Livyatan during the early 21st century, they selected the species name melvillei to honor Herman Melville and the lasting influence of his novel. The complete scientific name therefore joins two powerful traditions. The genus recalls the immense sea creature described in ancient Hebrew scripture, while the species commemorates an author whose greatest work centered upon humanity's complicated relationship with a sperm whale. Within that single scientific name rests an extraordinary chain of continuity. Fossils discovered in desert rocks preserve an apex predator that vanished millions of years before the first human ancestors appeared. Living sperm whales continue swimming through modern oceans as surviving members of the same broader family. Literature transformed one descendant into an enduring symbol of determination, obsession, and the unknowable character of the sea. Science then reunited those stories by recognizing their shared evolutionary heritage. The connection reaches even farther into the past. The lineage linking Livyatan and the modern sperm whale extends back roughly 50 million years to early whales inhabiting the ancient shores of what is now Pakistan. Across that immense interval, bodies changed, diets shifted, habitats diversified, and entire branches disappeared. Yet the family itself endured, carrying recognizable features through every chapter of its history. The path from prehistoric predator to human culture is therefore more than a poetic comparison. It is a continuous biological inheritance accompanied by an equally remarkable cultural journey. Bones buried beneath ancient sediments, living whales navigating today's oceans, pages within a celebrated novel, and the scientific name assigned to a fossil all belong to the same unbroken story, one that has traveled across 50 million years before arriving in our own hands. Stories often preserve patterns long before science discovers their origins. Across continents separated by oceans, languages, and centuries, people imagined remarkably similar beings inhabiting the deepest waters of the world. These immense creatures appeared in sacred writings, epic poems, oral traditions, and sailors' accounts, sharing an enduring image of a powerful presence concealed beneath the sea. Their details differed from one culture to another, yet the central idea remained strikingly consistent, suggesting that humanity repeatedly arrived at the same vision while standing before the same immense ocean. Among the oldest of these figures is Leviathan, described within the Hebrew scriptures, especially in the book of Job and the book of Psalms. There, the creature is presented as an overwhelming force beyond ordinary human power. One passage lingers upon its formidable mouth, declaring, "Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about." The description emphasizes not claws, horns, or wings, but extraordinary jaws lined with fearsome teeth, making the mouth itself the defining feature of the creature. Elsewhere, in the ancient Near East, appeared Tiamat, the immense sea being of Mesopotamian tradition, whose story became intertwined with creation itself. The Canaanite world preserved the figure of Lotan, another mighty creature associated with the untamed sea. Far to the north, Norse tradition imagined Jormungandr, the enormous serpent encircling the world beneath the surrounding ocean. Scandinavian sailors later spoke of the kraken, a gigantic inhabitant of northern waters capable of overwhelming ships through its immense size alone. These traditions emerged across cultures separated by thousands of miles and long stretches of history. Yet each imagined the sea as home to beings exceeding ordinary comprehension. Such similarities do not require direct cultural contact to become meaningful. Every civilization that depended upon the ocean encountered its overwhelming scale, unpredictable storms, and unfamiliar inhabitants. Human imagination naturally expanded those experiences into stories capable of expressing forces that seemed larger than everyday life. Myths became vessels, carrying memories of encounters that were difficult to explain within the limits of ordinary experience. Many of those encounters involved entirely real animals. Giant squid occasionally reached the surface or washed ashore, displaying arms unlike those of any familiar creature. Basking sharks drifting near the surface, particularly after decomposition altered their appearance, sometimes resembled monstrous reptiles when viewed from a distance. Living sperm whales demonstrated astonishing strength, and historical records describe several occasions when they rammed large wooden ships with tremendous force. Sailors witnessing such events possessed neither underwater cameras nor modern marine biology. They relied upon memory, conversation, and storytelling, allowing remarkable encounters to grow larger with each retelling. Those stories were not accurate zoological descriptions, yet neither were they inventions detached from reality. They reflected genuine observations filtered through the language and beliefs available at the time. Every generation added its own interpretations while preserving a central truth, namely that the sea contained animals of extraordinary scale, capable of inspiring both fascination and caution. Modern paleontology adds another dimension to that ancient intuition. Fossils reveal that oceans truly were inhabited by predators possessing enormous teeth, immense skulls, and the ability to overpower other whales. Livyatan belongs within that genuine biological history, not because ancient people knew of its existence, but because the world they imagined proved capable of producing creatures whose reality rivaled mythology. Long before human beings appeared, predators of astonishing size already moved through marine ecosystems that had been evolving for hundreds of millions of years. Even today, the ocean remains only partly explored. Vast regions of the deep have never been directly observed by human eyes, while countless marine species continue awaiting discovery. The sea still contains immense animals, unfamiliar behaviors, and hidden landscapes extending far beyond ordinary experience. In that sense, the ancient stories continue expressing something fundamentally true. Humanity did not invent the idea that the ocean could conceal wonders beyond expectation. It learned that lesson by living beside a world that once held Livyatan and that still preserves mysteries greater than anything completely known. Morning light can spread across the sea with remarkable gentleness. Swells rise and settle beneath passing clouds, seabirds drift above the surface, and distant whales break the horizon before disappearing once more beneath the water. To anyone watching from shore, the modern ocean can appear almost unchanged from age to age. Yet every tide moves across a world shaped by creatures that no longer exist, their influence preserved not in living memory but in the structure of marine life itself. The largest toothed predator alive today is the modern sperm whale. It still carries the broad head inherited from ancient ancestors, yet its life unfolds far below the surface as it searches for squid within the deep ocean. Near the surface, it presents an unexpectedly peaceful presence, spending long intervals, resting, breathing, and traveling between distant feeding grounds. The largest shark alive, the whale shark, follows an even gentler existence, filtering tiny plankton from immense volumes of seawater rather than pursuing large prey. Modern oceans still contain apex predators, including killer whales and great white sharks, but none resemble the immense macroraptorial sperm whales that once hunted other whales beneath open skies with enormous cutting teeth. The physical evidence for Livyatan is surprisingly modest. Fossils recovered from the ancient rocks of Peru now rest within the collections of the Natural History Museum of Lima. There are portions of a skull, immense teeth, and associated remains preserved through extraordinary geological fortune. Around those fossils lie the traces of countless other marine animals that inhabited the same vanished ecosystem. Together, they represent far more than isolated bones. They preserve an entire coastal world now transformed into desert, where every layer records interactions that unfolded millions of years before humanity appeared. Those fossils remind us that the oceans visible today emerged through continuous change rather than permanence. Every living whale belongs to lineages shaped by predators, shifting climates, and evolving ecosystems extending across immense spans of time. Predation influenced migration, body size, social behavior, and survival. Extinction opened ecological opportunities that surviving species gradually occupied. Generation after generation, natural selection continued, rewriting the living ocean until the communities familiar today replaced those of the Miocene epoch. Even now, one descendant of that ancient family continues carrying forward an inheritance that began tens of millions of years ago. Modern sperm whales communicate through powerful sequences of clicks known as codas. These patterned sounds travel extraordinary distances through seawater, allowing members of the same family group to remain connected across the darkness of the deep. Researchers continue studying these vocalizations, discovering increasing evidence that different populations possess distinctive acoustic traditions passed from mothers to calves across many generations. Some scientists have proposed that these patterns function partly as identity markers, allowing whales to recognize family membership and social affiliation through sound alone. Such traditions would represent cultural inheritance rather than genetic change, surviving because each generation learns from the one before it. Within the deep ocean, knowledge may therefore travel not only through inherited anatomy, but also through learned voices echoing across decades of shared experience. No recording can reach backward into the Miocene epoch, and no fossil preserves the sounds once produced by Livyatan. Yet both animals inherited sophisticated acoustic organs from common ancestors, making it reasonable to imagine that communication has remained central to this remarkable family throughout its evolutionary history. Across millions of years, bodies changed, diets shifted, habitats transformed, and entire branches disappeared, while the importance of sound endured beneath the waves. Standing beside the sea today, it is easy to believe the present ocean has always existed in its familiar form. The fossil record offers a gentler, deeper perspective. It reveals an older ocean filled with different voices, different hunters, and different rhythms of life. The waters before us remain vast and beautiful, yet they are also the final chapter of a much longer story, one written by animals like Livyatan, whose immense teeth, ancient lineage, and vanished world continue to shape every living ocean that follows.